let's call it what it is. If this money existed, do you know what that would be called, MAGA Queen? A government handout. The government would be handing out money to you. A government handout. MAGA Queen. You would, socialism. Thank you, Toy. It's socialism. You're not going to take that money, right? Only the dirty left radical commies who believe in socialism should get that money, right? So 80 million of you, I know the checks are ready to go out. 80 million of you that voted for Donald Trump, you guys aren't going to accept yours, right? Because MAGA Queen, that's say it with me, friends, government handout. Okay? Okay. So it's at August 1st, which is what, 2 weeks away, when you get your money, MAGA, my expectation is that you would just turn it over, right? Because of course you're not going to take government handouts. That would be socialism. That would be, in your mind, to be socialism, communism, Marxism, fascism, radicalism, whatever isms, all of the isms, because you don't know what any of them are. But when you get your government handout, you can't obviously look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm going to take this check from the government because it's a handout. You're going to say, I'm tearing that up. I don't want radical communist government money. Okay? So check back with me because I'll be curious as to how that moment of clarity comes to you on August 1st. Sweet. And then there's this other story going around about how the government there's a surplus in revenue in the month of June. And I don't have all the details, but I can tell you this. There's a lot of right-wing podcasters and creators are going around talking about a government surplus. Well, it's because June 1st fell on a weekend. And then all monies had to be billed prior to, so that the bills were paid on time. So it's a complicated formula, but it's not what they say it is. Long story short, we're trillions of dollars upside down, and the government's been spending more money under the Trump administration than they did under the Biden administration. So there you go. Okay, so let's talk about this whole situation with MIT. I don't know if you guys are following this, but there's Manny. Hold on a second. I've got a background for you. Since you're here.
Oh, God.
Second. I've got a background for you. Since you're here.
Oh, God.
What's on your mind today, buddy?
I just wanted to come up to actually, you were talking about the $27 billion surplus from, specifically from tariffs. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of misinformation. Oh, I love that.
Manny's going to be joining us frequently on Mondays. We'll figure out the time. We're going to do kind of a immigration breakdown because he's been, first of all, I want to say this. We have an amazing mod community of which Manny is now a member, and our team does so much work. I mean, I just sit up here and talk and yell and scream at people. I really don't do that much anymore, but they're the ones that always make sure that I've got the information at my fingertips whenever I need it. And Manny has done a lot of work compiling the latest on immigration and the violation of civil rights and human rights. And we're going to give him some space to talk about it with Minutes with Manny. Date and time to be determined, but will likely be on Mondays. You and I can figure that out. Anyway, yes. There you go.
So just quickly, because I don't want to interrupt your flow. The surplus. The first thing is, yes, it is due to tariffs, but the headline, people misread the headline. First, people say it was the first surplus in 20 years. That's not true. And
it's not true at all.
In the last 120 months, we've had about 26 surpluses. Secondly, the headline specifically says the first June surplus since 2017. This is true. We don't typically get June surpluses. That same 26 surpluses in the last 120 months, we've only had 3. This is the third. That is because we typically get our surpluses in April and December. June is an odd month. Sometimes we get them in September. That's another odd month. But this specific year, yes, we had a surplus for last month, but we are still running a $1.3 trillion deficit for this year alone.
Yes.
We're still running.
We are
$1.3 trillion.
Yeah. So again, that is going to be difficult because the right wing has jumped on it again. You know, they're better at these quick hit messages than we are. Then information gets out there, something spews. They're gonna see a particular number. They're never going to unpack the context. So thank you for doing that, bro. I appreciate you very much.
All right.
Talk to you later. You too. Minutes with Manny. Coming to a program near you. Okay, so we got that. So when your dividend check comes out, you're wherever this magical money comes in from tariff revenue, and you get your check, my expectation is that all 80 million of you will walk right down to the socialist post office and mail it back. You know, hop on your socialist public transportation, go to your socialist post office, and put your socialist government handout in the mail and allow it to be returned. Okay? Thanks. So I want to talk about this whole thing with MIT. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of this press conference that the president gave at the Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit announcing some investments in Pennsylvania. This shit is wild. It's one thing to talk about his delusion. It's one thing to talk about his fucking delusion, but this is crazy. So here you go. Listen to this, and then we'll talk about the actual details on the other side.
Although my uncle was at MIT, one of the great professors, 51 years, whatever, he was the longest serving professor in the history of MIT, 3 degrees in nuclear, chemical, and math.
Nuclear what?
That's a smart man. Kaczynski was one of his students. Do you know who Kaczynski was? There's very little difference between a madman and a genius. But Kaczynski, I said, what kind of a student was he, Uncle John, Dr. John Trump? He said, what kind of a student? And he said, seriously good. He said he'd go around correcting everybody, but it didn't work out too well for him.
So on Tuesday, the president told
Okay, hang on to that point 1 second, okay? So that's the story that he told about his uncle at MIT. Well, Jen Psaki picked up on that story. So here you go.
He does not seem to remember basic facts about his own life. He does not seem to remember things that happened as recently as his first term. This is a guy who once boasted he had the best memory of all time. His words, certainly not mine.
Yeah.
But recently it seems like he is, well, not at all okay, I guess is one way to describe it.
Yeah.
Let me show you what I mean. Yesterday, Trump attended an AI summit in Pittsburgh. And within 10 minutes of taking the microphone, he launched into an utterly strange digression about his uncle and the notorious domestic terrorist of all people, Ted Kaczynski, better known as the Unabomber.
My uncle was at MIT, one of the great professors, 51 years, whatever. He was the longest serving professor in the history of MIT. Kaczynski was one of his students. Do you know who Kaczynski was? There's very little difference between a madman and a genius. But Kaczynski, I said, what kind of a student was he, Uncle John, Dr. John Trump? He said, what kind of a student? And he said, seriously good. He said he'd go around correcting everybody, but it didn't work out too well for him.
But again, to sum that up, Trump says his uncle taught the Unabomber at MIT, and apparently the question of all the possible questions.
Again, the claim is that his Uncle John, Dr. John Trump, taught Ted Kaczynski the Unabomber. That's what you guys heard, right? That's what he said. That's what you heard. That's what he implied.
Trump asked him was what kind of a student Kaczynski was. And then he felt the need to share the detail that the Unabomber was a good student to some perplexed people. And yes, that's a pretty weird, pretty creepy thing for the president of the United States, or really anyone to say at an event that was supposed to be about artificial intelligence. But it gets weirder. Because the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, never attended MIT. And while Trump did have an uncle who worked at MIT, his uncle died in 1985, which is a full 11 years before the Unabomber was publicly identified and apprehended. So I guess either Donald Trump is confessing to having known the identity of the Unabomber more than a decade before he was caught. There could be that, I suppose, or something is seriously off with Donald Trump.
You think?
And that's not a one-off. That is hardly the only incident. I mean, today reporters in the Oval Office asked Donald Trump about new reporting that he has floated the idea of firing Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. And this is how he responded.
He's a terrible Fed chair. I was surprised he was appointed.
Yeah.
Were you?
Were you?
Were you really surprised he was appointed? The person who nominated him for that job was you, Donald Trump.
Correct.
It was you.
That was you.
Trump.
So there's that. And then, of course, Triple K was asked about that statement regarding the Unabomber. Again, just to be clear, Ted Kaczynski did not attend. Okay? Did not attend MIT. Wasn't identified as the Unabomber until 11 years after Donald Trump's uncle had passed away. Literally impossible for what he described to have happened. So it's one of two things. It's him continuing to just be this ridiculous liar, thinking his base is going to continue to believe it, or he's losing his fucking shit. Two things can be true. This was Caroline in her response to that whole zaniness.
Very detailed story about his uncle, noted scientist John.
And pay attention to her answer, okay?
Trump and Theodore Kaczynski, the late Unabomber. He said that Dr. Trump taught Ted Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski was not identified as the Unabomber until 1996, 11 years after John Trump passed away. Yeah. It would have been impossible for John Trump to have ever discussed the Unabomber with the president. So what was he talking about? And I have one follow-up.
Andrew, with so many issues going on in the world, I'm a little bit surprised you would ask such a question, although I'm not sometimes coming from you, I will say, but I'm willing to give you an answer. Nevertheless, the president's uncle did, in fact, teach at MIT. He was a very intelligent professor. The president's very proud of his family. Professor. In fact, the president has a letter from his uncle on the MIT letterhead that sits in the Oval Office dining room. Maybe we'll let you see it sometime.
And that was it. So listen, my uncle taught at TIM and he taught Einstein in 1996. And I had a conversation with Einstein and he said, "You've got the biggest brain I've ever seen." And his base is like, "You see that? Trump's so damn smart. His uncle taught Einstein. Seriously." What? So there are various things now that we can remind people like Cosmo, who just doesn't. Cosmo's just a troll. Just ignore Cosmo. Don't even give any attention, friends. Just ignore him. That's what he wants. He wants attention. Just ignore him. So many things. Now people want to hold on to the auto pen, right? They want to say the auto pen is the biggest scandal. Look, I would be very happy to legislate the use of the auto pen. I have no problem with that. Thank you. I have no problem with that whatsoever. If you want to say the auto pen can only be used for, ceremonial signings or ambassadorships or things like that. But if it's an executive order or a pardon or signing a bill into law, I have no problem with legislating that. Every fucking president uses it. There is reporting that Trump used it for the stack of J6 pardons. So again, stop with the fucking stupid bullshit. Okay, just stop. If you really want to make changes, then make changes and suggest something, right? just suggest something, but stop with your fucking nonsense. Okay. All right. So we've addressed Triple K Caroline and no cross, by the way. Although she has a button-up dress, and I can't tell. No cross. I'm going to say no cross. All right. So let me do this. The controversy continues with the Epstein situation. For those of you who don't know, there was news reporting came down last night that CBS is canceling The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Now, we can draw some conclusions. So next year, the new season ends in May. That's sweeps. So there'll be, I guess, no more Late Show, which is really, really sad. I've been to the Sullivan Theater twice. I saw Letterman there and I saw a Colbert Show, and it's incredibly amazing to be in that particular space. First of all, just the history and the Beatles and everything else, but it's just really sad. So Paramount is will be merging with Skydance Media. So you can draw some conclusions that Paramount just had to pay out a lawsuit. Stephen Colbert, first of all, the Tonight Show is the most popular of all the late night shows, has been for a long time. He's great. He's also probably the one who's the most critical of Trump publicly, like all the time. So there you go. Don't know why. We can draw our own conclusions, but the fact that the press is bending the knee like they are, and it just drives me crazy. Well, there is now a story that's been reported in the Wall Street Journal that has to do with the Epstein story. Now, I want to, before we get into this, these are my thoughts, right? So this is kind of where I want to go, because and I've been trying to figure out how I want to say this, and it finally came to me last night, okay? The right is claiming that it was created by Donald Trump, started it. People in the chat are saying the same thing this morning. And again, I know logic is difficult for many, many people, but I need people to think of it this way, okay? If it is true that the Epstein story was made up by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, James Comey, John Brennan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, prior to the 2016 election, because that's what their claims are now, then they made it up to do what? If they made it up to go after Donald Trump, then why didn't they use it to go after Donald Trump? Then they had it again for that 4-year stretch when Trump was the president. Why didn't they use it again during his administration the first time to going into the 2020 election? Then they had it again for the next 4 years during the Biden administration. Why didn't they use it then, leading up to the 2024 election? So if this is true, then first of all, how stupid are they for not using it? But if it's true, why didn't they use it? I mean, can somebody answer that question? Does somebody want to understand that? You can't see the background. Is that better? Hopefully. Again, you guys can try to figure that out on your own. That's the question that you need to be asking yourself. But the story won't go away, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't, because we have a lot of people. I asked our mod team again. First of all, hearts in the chat for mods everywhere. We have the best mods. We have the smartest chat on TikTok and the best mods. Fight me. But again, an acknowledgement to the mods, because people who do what I do here, the 20 hours a week and whatever else, we could not do without our amazing mod teams. So hearts in the chat for mods everywhere, please. All right, let me just bring up Benny. I see you, buddy. You're welcome back. I'll get you in one moment. Good morning, Chris. How are you today?
Good morning, sir. Yeah, so about that, how everybody, Trump comes out and is like, oh, it's fake now all of a sudden. But there was a clip of him on, can't remember the name of the show, but it was him on the phone. And I don't know if you've seen it, but he got caught saying at the end of it, when Comey was going through the files, and they found what they found in the files was fake.
On him was a lie. Yeah. I did see that. Yeah.
That's all I wanted to tell you, man. That was nuts.
I've got that someplace. I don't know where that sound is, but I'll try to find it. But thank you for that reminder, bro. I appreciate you very much.
Man. All right.
See you later.
Bye.
You too. Bye. Yeah, there is sound. I wanted to try to corroborate, because that's the only one that I heard. But yeah, he's on tape, I think, calling into a Fox show saying the information they have on me in the Epstein files is fake. Of course it is. Of course it is. So I see a first person in the box that I haven't spoken to in a while. Welcome back there. Welcome back to you, sir. Nice to see you again.
Friendly neighbor from up north. How's it going, guys? It's been a while.
Excellent. Where you been, my guy? You good?
Buddy, I have been busy with life. Life has been lifing. New job's been going fantastic.
Good to hear.
Just keeping it fresh, keeping it local. Just poking in, just saying, hey, miss all you beautiful peoples. I hope that you're all doing well. All this talk about Trump is, it's got my impressions going. You should have heard about my grandfather. He was a farmer. Old MacDonald Trump. He had pigs and chickens and sheeps and He was the best farmer, the greatest farmer you could say,
Greatest farmer. Everyone says
Greatest
he's the
farmer.
greatest farmer. Yep.
His farm was very bigly. Fields
Very
and
bigly.
fields of trees.
Fields and fields. Yes. Fields and fields. Well, it's good to see your face, man. I'm glad you're back in the fray. Can we expect more visits from Benny going forward, our friendly neighbor of the North?
I'm going to try to poke in here and there. Things have been pretty busy on my end. All for good reasons, I assure you.
Good.
But just
good.
looking
That's
after,
good.
Looking after the family, looking after the local community, just getting involved more with the nonprofit world. Exciting stuff, man. And
I work in the nonprofit space. I do a lot of work for nonprofits, so I get it. It's a labor of love for sure. It certainly is a labor of love. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been loving it so far. So we're doing good. Kiddo just turned 3 years old last week.
Congrats!
So
That's great, man. Congrats!
Yeah,
that's
dude.
Amazing.
I know. I won't take up too much of your time there, Steve. I miss all of you. I hope that everybody's doing well. Please stay safe. And I'm going to send you off with what I always used to say. Elbows up and keep your stick on the ice, folks. Happy Friday.
We love you, Benny. See you later, pal. Good to have you back, Benny. All right. So again, if you guys, if mods, if you guys can find that sound, I think it's audio of Trump on Fox talking about Epstein. I don't remember the date, but if we can find that and somebody can listen to it just to feel like we're talking about it accurately. Okay. So where we are now is this story that broke from the Wall Street Journal. Okay. The title is J.E.'s friends sent him bawdy letters for a 50th birthday album. One was from Donald Trump. This story gets wild, so I'm just going to read through some of it. I'm going to read to you Mr. Trump's responses to this on Truth Social because he's losing his fucking mind. Tapping is clapping, friends. Don't forget the $2 challenge has been thrown down by Dana. If you want to participate, you can. All my various things with involved this dollars are at Factsstillmatter. I'm pointing to whatever, so it's, yeah. And don't forget, there's a gifting goal, and don't forget about subscribing as well. The story goes as such. It was J.E.'s 50th birthday, and Ghislaine Maxwell was preparing a special gift to mark the occasion. She turned to E.'s family and friends. One of them was Donald Trump. Maxwell collected letters from Trump and dozens of Epstein's associates for a 2003 birthday album, according to documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. Pages from the leather-bound album, assembled before Epstein was arrested in 2006, are among the documents examined by Justice Department officials who investigated Epstein and Maxwell years ago, according to people who have reviewed the pages. It's unclear if any of the pages are part of the Trump administration's recent review. Okay. The president's past relationship with Epstein is at a sensitive moment. You think? The Justice Department documents, the so-called Epstein files, and who or what is in them are at the center of a storm consuming the Trump administration on Wednesday after angry comments about how the files are a hoax created by Democrats. President Trump lashed out his own supporters for refusing to let the matter go, basically calling them stupid and how they've been duped, which we're starting to see fracturing. Before I get too far away from that, there was some comments made by some of his most loyal voters. Some of the people that have been on his side from the very beginning, including comments like this. Where is it? Hold on. And I've got an interesting story from Ron Wyden that I'll read to you guys too. So this is from MVP. Facts, never thought I'd see the day I'd leave MAGA, but for many of us, this is inexcusable. Evan Kilgore, Donald Trump just said he doesn't want my support anymore because I care about the e-files. Goodbye, Mr. President. You just lost me. Leaving MAGA. Rich Logus, leaving MAGA was one of the most difficult decisions of my life. I allowed myself to believe and act upon Trump's and the GOP's lies. Furthermore, the prospects of walking away from a community and second family begot a personal tumult and turmoil. It took me a year to finally leave MAGA. I implore everyone to show grace to any Trump voter who expresses remorse and is willing to make amends for past actions and rhetoric that may have hurt others. Yeah, I'm not quite there yet, my guy. Sorry about that. And then there's a few others. people are identifying as unaffiliated. I left the Republican Party a few days ago, writes Lone Wolf, unaffiliated from now on. I'm done with the corrupt system that protects P3DOs. We really need a government that's by the people, for the people. We've never had that in my lifetime. So a lot of people realizing a lot of things. We'll see how it plays out. All right. The letter bearing Trump's name, this was, again, after Trump called out his followers. And we just read through some of the statements made by some of his ardent followers, including people in right-wing spaces. I've got one that I want to play for you guys before I go too deep down this particular road. I'm going to give you an example of how bad it's gotten, okay? Let me see if I can find it real quick because I want to stay on this story. I'm just trying to weave everything together here. Hang on a second. Hang on. Do I have that? I thought I did. Can you guys find me the, where is it? Oh, I gotta find it. It's so great. Wait, I might have it right here. Hold on. Ah, yes. One of the biggest voices in support of the administration early on, and has since lost a little bit of flavor, Nick Fuentes is back. And this is his response.
And now he says, if you're not on board with the Epstein cover-up, oh, I don't want your support. You're a weakling. Fuck you.
Ho-ho!
Fuck you. You suck.
Oh,
You are fat. You are a joke. You are stupid. You are not funny. You are not as smart as you think you are. And honestly,
wow.
And if you watch my show, you know I've been very critical. I've never been this far. This just goes to show this entire thing has been a scam. When we look back on the history of populism in America, we are going to look back on the MAGA movement as the biggest scam in American history. And the liberals were right. The MAGA supporters were had. They were. When we look back in history, we will see Trump as a scam artist who served as a vehicle for this rather than the other way around. We were not the vehicle for Trump. Trump was the vehicle for all of us.
Wow, where the fuck have you been, Nick? We've been saying that forever. Right? Forever. What was the background we had up yesterday? Let's see. Remember this? Right? So Nick's like, yeah, that's kind of true. Admit liberals were right or support a pred. So I don't know where this is going to go, how much further this is going to go. But again, remember the scenario that I just gave you about how if it's the Dems, why didn't they use it? So just now on True Social, and I've got some more to read. This is 54 minutes ago. From Mr. Trump, if there was a smoking gun on Epstein, why didn't the Dems, who controlled the files for 4 years and had Garland and Comey in charge, use it? Because they had nothing. Wait, you said that they're the ones that created it. You said they are the ones who created the information, which means they have something. You told your followers that it was the Dems who created it. And then now you're saying they didn't have anything? So which is it? Did they create information that included your name that wasn't true? Like, what? Okay, back to the story. It's fucking wild. Nick Fuentes jumped off the bandwagon. All right. The letter bearing Trump's name, which was reviewed by the Journal, is bawdy, like others in the album. It contains several we're reading from the Wall Street Journal article entitled Jeffrey Epstein's Friends Sent Him Bawdy Letters for a 50th Birthday Album. One was from Donald Trump. Okay. All right. The letter bearing Trump's name, which was reviewed by the Journal, is bawdy, like others in the album. It contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hand-drawn with a heavy marker. A pair of small arcs denotes the woman's breasts, and the future president's signature is a squiggly Donald below her waist, mimicking pubic hair. The letter concludes, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." Okay. In an interview with the Journal on Tuesday evening, Trump denied writing the letter or drawing the picture. "This is not me. This is a fake thing. It's a fake Wall Street Journal story. I never wrote a picture in my life. I don't draw pictures of women. It's not my language. It's not my words. Well, is that true? Is that really true? Because there's a Newsweek story that came out in response to this entitled Donald Trump's Drawings Under Scrutiny Over Epstein Birthday Letter. A number of drawings produced by the president have resurfaced after it was reported that he sent a body letter and sketch to Jeffrey Epstein to mark his 50th birthday. And in response to a Wall Street Journal report that he sent a letter and sketch of a naked woman to Epstein 5 years before the financier was convicted of child abuse, which, by the way, was happening during the time of this party, I never wrote a picture in my life. Newsweek contacted the White House and the Wall Street Journal for comment outside regular working hours. Why it matters. In recent weeks, Trump's faced a backlash from a section of his base after the Justice Department published a memo saying Epstein took his life while in federal custody. The agency also concluded that there was no evidence Epstein possessed an incriminating client list. The president has since blamed Democrats for what he calls the Epstein hoax, which he has branded a scam. Conspiracy theorists have long suggested that Epstein kept a list of clients involved in child abuse whom he blackmailed, and he could have that perhaps he could have been unalive to protect the powerful individuals. You know the deal. Wall Street Journal reported this week that a letter bearing Trump's name was among dozens of birthday notes that Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime associate, collected from the financier's family and friends for a 50th birthday gift. The Journal said the letter bearing Trump's name was dated 2003 and featured several lines of typewritten text surrounded by the outline of a naked woman sketched in marker. Speaking to the Journal, Trump denied involvement, saying, "This is not me. This is a fake thing. It's a fake Wall Street Journal story. I never wrote a picture of my life. I don't draw pictures of women. It's not language. It's not my words." On True Social, the president added, the Wall Street Journal printed a fake letter, supposedly to Epstein. These are not my words, not the way I talk. Also, I don't draw pictures. I told Rupert Murdoch it was a scam, that he shouldn't print this fake story, but he did, and now I'm going to sue his ass off and that of his third-rate newspaper. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Trump previously sold a number of his drawings at charity auctions. One sketch of the Empire State Building bearing Trump's signature was sold at an auction in Florida in around 1995 and put up for sale again in 2017, The Guardian reported. Numerous pictures. Trump also produced a signed drawing of the New York skyline in 2004 for the Capuchin Food Pantry's benefit Doodle for Hunger. It was later resold by auction houses Sotheby's. In 2017, the BBC reported that another sketch of the New York skyline that Trump had produced for a 2005 charity auction had resold for $30,000. On X, Adam Kinzinger, former Republican U.S. representative and Trump critic, shared 9 sketches of skyscrapers or the New York skyline that Trump had signed. He added, "Trump loves to draw. Just saying." In his 2008 book, Trump Never Gives Up, How I Turn My Biggest Challenge into Success, the president wrote, "Each year, I donate an autographed doodle to the Doodle for Hunger auction at Tavern on the Green." California Governor Gavin Newsom shared a screenshot on X of a 2019 Washington Post article about one of Trump's drawings going up for sale. He captioned it with the president's quote, "I never wrote a picture in my life." House Republican Thomas Massie wrote on X, "Some folks are eager to sweep the Epstein files under the rug, but we will force a vote on my legislation to release the Epstein files in September if the required 7 legislative days don't elapse before the Speaker recesses Congress for the August break." President Trump on True Social yesterday, "Based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval." So, yeah. So in his own book, he talked about doodling. You could replace the I in doodle, the O in doodle, with an I, and that's what he's now under wraps, under heat for his diddling escapades. But can you again imagine? See, this is the problem. When you have conditioned your base to believe everything that you tell them, everything. When you convince the base that this entire thing is a Democratic hoax because they are not informed enough, I'll say, to be able to go beyond the statement. You can't say this. Hold on. I'll just read you the full statement. It's fucking wild. It's just crazy. Hold on a second. Do we find that sound? Just try to. All right, hold on. Jesus. The Wall Street Journal. Hold on. I got to do this. I'm sorry. I know some of you don't like it, but I do, so I'm going to play it.
The Wall Street Journal printed a fake letter, supposedly to Epstein. These are not my words, not the way I talk. Also, I don't draw pictures. I told Rupert Murdoch it was a scam, that he shouldn't print this fake story, but he did. And now I'm going to sue his ass off, and that of his third-rate paper. Thank you for your attention to this matter, DJT.
And then the actual statement himself is just crazy. Okay, here you go.
The Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch personally were warned directly by President Donald J. Trump, warned directly by me that the supposed letter they printed by President Trump to Jeffrey Epstein was a fake. And if they print it, they will be sued. Mr. Murdoch stated that he would take care of it, obviously did not have the power to do so. The editor of the Wall Street Journal, Emma Tucker, was told directly by Caroline Levitt and by President Trump that the letter was a fake. But Emma Tucker didn't want to hear that. Instead, they're going with a false, malicious, and defamatory story anyway. President Trump will be suing. I fucking hate it when he speaks in the third person. Anyway, President Trump will be suing the Wall Street Journal, News Corp, and Mr. Murdoch shortly. The press has to learn to be truthful and not rely on sources that probably don't even exist. President Trump has already beaten George Stephanopoulos, ABC, 60 Minutes, CBS, and others, and looks forward to suing and holding accountable the once great Wall Street Journal. It has truly turned out to be a disgusting and filthy rag. And writing defamatory lies like this shows their desperation to remain relevant. If there were any truth at all on the Epstein hoax as it pertains to President Trump, this information would have been revealed by Comey, Brennan, Cook and Hillary, and other radical left lunatics years ago. It certainly would not have sat in a file waiting for Trump to have won 3 elections. This is yet another example of fake news.
That one statement right there. If there were any truth at all on the Epstein hoax as it pertains to President Trump, this information would have been revealed by Comey, Brennan, Cook and Hillary, and other radical left lunatics years ago. To do what with? If it's true, again, let's just assume for the purpose of this conversation, let's just assume that it's true. Did they just make it? They just decided to create it? Let's just create the list and then just leave it in a drawer? Right? I don't know. I don't know. It's just crazy to me to think about how desperate they've become. So back to the story from the Wall Street Journal, because this is where this whole thing started. I never wrote a picture of my life. I don't draw pictures of women. He told the Journal he was preparing to file a lawsuit if it publishes an article. I'm going to sue the Wall Street Journal just like I sued everyone else, he said. Allegations that Epstein had been abusing girls became public in 2006, and he was arrested that year. Epstein lost his life in 2019 in jail after he was arrested a second time and charged with trafficking. We went through that whole thing yesterday. The timeline, you can watch the replay on YouTube. You can go through the timeline. We went through the little threads that were pulled, the connections that Alex Acosta had, that Pam Bondi had, to all the various little layers of shit, right? We went through that whole thing yesterday. Justice Department officials didn't respond to requests for comment or address questions about whether the Trump page and other pages of the birthday album were part of the agency's recent documents review. The FBI has declined comment. The existence of the album and the contents of the birthday letter haven't previously been reported. The album had poems, photos, and greetings from business people, academics, Epstein's former girlfriends, and childhood pals, according to the documents reviewed by the Journal and people familiar with them. Among those who submitted letters were billionaire Leslie Wexner and attorney Alan Dershowitz. The album also contained a letter from now deceased Harvard economist, one of Epstein's report cards from Mark Twain Junior High School in Brooklyn, and a note from a former assistant that included an acrostic with Epstein's name, Jeffrey, oh Jeffrey, everyone loves you, fun in the sun, fun just for fun. Remember, don't forget me soon. Epstein, you rock, you are the best. Epstein was Wexner's money manager at the time. The longtime leader of Victoria's Secrets wrote a short message that said, I wanted to get you what you want, so here it is. After the text was a line drawing of what happened to be what appeared to be a woman's breast. Wexner declined to comment, though, through a spokesperson. Wexner's spokesperson previously told the Journal that the retail mogul, quote, severed all ties with Epstein in 2007, after everything, of course, and never spoke with him again. Okay. Dershowitz's letter included a mock-up of a Vanity Unfair magazine cover with mock headlines such as, who was Jack the Ripper? Was it Jeffrey Epstein? He joked that he convinced the magazine to change the focus of an article from Epstein to Bill Clinton. Dershowitz, who represented Epstein after his first arrest, said, it's been a long time and I don't recall the content of it, what I may have written. The book was put together by a New York City bookbinder, Herbert Weitz, according to people who were involved in the process. Weitz, who passed away in 2020, listed Epstein as a client on his website. It isn't clear how the letter with Trump's signature was prepared. Inside the outline of the naked woman was a typewritten note styled as an imaginary conversation between Trump and Epstein, written in third person. Voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything, the note began. Donald. Yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey. Nor will I, since I always know what it is. Donald. We have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey. Yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald. Enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey. As a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Donald, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. When he turned 50, Epstein was already wealthy from managing Wexner's fortune and was socializing with Trump, Clinton, and other powerful people he often entertained at his Manhattan townhouse, Palm Beach, Florida home, and private Caribbean island. A spokesman for Clinton referred to a 2019 statement that the former president had cut off ties more than a decade before Epstein's second arrest and didn't know about Epstein's alleged crimes. Sure you did, Bill. You were part of them. Epstein and Trump spent time together in the 1990s and early 2000s and were photographed at social events, including with Maxwell and Melania. A 1992 tape from the NBC archives shows Trump partying with Epstein at his Mar-a-Lago estate. Trump is seen pulling a woman toward him and patting her on the butt. Trump, along with others, including Clinton, also appeared several times on flight logs for Epstein's private jet. So again, here you go, MAGA. Here's a cognitive or a logical line of questioning moment for you, critical thinking. If you believe that Bill Clinton is guilty because he's on the flight log, then the same would have to apply to Donald Trump, right? I believe Bill Clinton is part of the problem. I believe that Bill Clinton participated in some of these allegations of crimes against young women facilitated by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. I believe that. See how easy that is to say? See how easy it is? I literally had a conversation with somebody the other day that believes everybody else is guilty of these crimes except Donald Trump. Okay. Both men, a 2002 New York Magazine profile, Epstein quoted Trump saying, I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy, Trump said. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life. Both men said they subsequently had a falling out. Trump has said that their friendship ended before he pleaded guilty to procuring a minor for prostitution in 2008, served time in a Florida jail, and then registered as an offender. When Epstein was arrested again in 2019, Trump said he hadn't talked to Epstein for 15 years. I knew him like everybody else in Palm Beach knew him. I was not a fan of his, that I can tell you. Not a fan? Okay. Trump's spokeswoman said that told the Journal in 2023 that Trump had banned Epstein from his Mar-a-Lago club at some point without elaborating. Maxwell, British socialite, convicted in 2020 to helping Epstein's associations with Trump and many powerful people have been well documented. There remain questions about what the FBI possesses about Epstein and his well-connected friends. In 2019, the FBI confiscated evidence from Epstein's properties in the U.S. Virgin Islands and in New York. In 2019, who was the president? Yeah. So let me just, I think I should take the opportunity to play this again because this is, do you remember this? We played this yesterday.
Right. Because Epstein was convicted during the Biden administration. Not one time did Hakeem Jeffrey call for any exposition of what the Biden Justice Department knew. He doesn't care about the truth. He doesn't care about the people.
Bill,
this is what
hold on.
he does.
Hold on, Bill. Hold on. You said Epstein was convicted during the Biden administration. Epstein committed during the Trump administration.
Yeah, so am I wrong on that?
Yeah, you're wrong.
He was arrested in 2019 and he committed in 2019. He died August 10th of 2019. So the Biden administration was not involved in a conviction or a trial of him. They were in his madam, of Elaine Maxwell.
Okay. But he was arrested and indicted under Merrick Garland.
No, under Trump.
Who had all of the information.
Epstein was arrested, indicted under Trump in 2019. Trump was president. Merrick Garland was not the attorney general.
Okay.
So again, it's 2019. I know the look on Bill O'Reilly's face. That was Bill O'Reilly. So once again, right? Let's allow this to just, I know it's difficult, but I think this is the simplest way to cut to the chase on this story, right? If it is true that Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, the Easter Bunny, Jolly Green Giant, James Comey, John Brennan, everybody else, this Democrat plot, that they were working together to have all this information and to do what with it? Because if they had all this stuff, if the claims that Donald Trump is making, that the things that are in there that mention him are fake, why would they not then release them to use that as information against him? And people forget, during the Biden administration, in fact, last January, a lot of documents were unsealed because of the Ghislaine Maxwell case. And a lot of the reasons why information doesn't go public is because litigation is happening. She was just sentenced a couple years ago. So a lot of this information became public after that. So information was released under the Biden administration. Now, because people on the right are just so unwilling to try to think things through, it makes it impossible for us to have these conversations, right? So just let logic creep in just for a tiny second. I promise it won't hurt. It hurts about as much as my nibbles, okay? I don't bite, I nibble. I'm just letting you know it won't hurt. I promise. Just be like, okay, if it's true and the Democrats created this, then why have they never used it? Why have they never used it? Why didn't they come out with it? Why weren't they going public with it right around the time of the Access Hollywood tapes? Why? Why weren't they doing that? Why not? Why were they not using it leading up to the 2020 election? They didn't. Why did they not use it leading up to the 2024 election? They didn't. So again, right? I mean, just try to think about it at least a little bit logically. It would really, really help. Would really help. All right, I've got Chris in the box. Then I want to shift our topics to our unexpected angels for the day, and then we'll welcome Amira Barger at 10 o'clock. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Good, Steve. How are we doing?
I'm good, buddy.
Poor Bill O'Reilly, how the mighty have fallen.
Seriously, right? Crazy.
Right.
The look on his face. The look on his face was just wild.
Oh, it's priceless. It was great.
Shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you read that Timu tweet from Trump earlier saying, "Call me." They had that thing for 4 years and call me. See, MAGA loves saying, do your research, do your research. All right, here's a little research for MAGA. The whole story about Epstein really didn't become public until the Miami Herald did a piece on it in 2018.
That I read yesterday. Yep.
Right. Okay. So that was 2018 when Trump was in office.
Correct.
Then a judge ruled against the non-prosecution agreement that he made said it was illegal, and that was in
Correct.
2019. Then there was a grand jury. He was indicted and arrested in July of 2019. He then unalived himself in August of 2019. All this happened when Trump was in office.
Correct.
Now, he claimed Comey was involved. Comey was fired by Trump in 2017. So I don't know what he claims Comey was in charge of.
I know.
So there would be
That's a good point.
Obama would not have made the list because there was no publicity about Epstein before Trump ran for office. It wasn't until he ran for office and he appointed Acosta, who had done the sweetheart deal. That's when it basically hit the fan, so to speak.
Correct.
So, MAGA, do your thinking. The timeline doesn't work on his excuse in any way, shape, or form.
It doesn't.
You know, but they can't grasp that.
No, you're right. I mean, people. I mean, again, here's the thing: when people like Bill O'Reilly are going out there, no, it wasn't under the Merrick Garland, Joe Biden Justice Department. It was under Trump. So the argument that he was attempting to make just blows up in his face.
Yeah.
Listen, I'll say it again. I don't give a fuck who's on the fucking list. I want to see the list. I want every single person. Again, I don't know if it's a list or it's a black book. We'll just call it the list for the purposes of the conversation. We know it because, again, I said this yesterday, right? Ghislaine Maxwell is in jail for trafficking minors, okay? And for conspiracy to traffic minors, which means more than one person was involved. So who was she trafficking those victims, survivors to? Those people would be the people whose names we want.
Exactly.
Anybody that's on that list, I don't give a fuck who it is. Give them due process. Let them go to court, defend themselves. If found guilty, throw those motherfuckers under the fucking jail.
Right.
Period.
And again, you're right, because we don't know what they actually have. We know they have the black book, and you can't go by just a black book because it looks like anyone he ever met and had any
exactly
is in the black book, so you can't really count that. The flight logs, yes, because at least you can say, well, they're on the plane. But
sure.
I think,
and we know that from last year that Trump was on the plane, as was Clinton, as were others. We know that.
Which the only way we know that, weren't they released under Biden?
I know, right?
You know. But that's another thing.
Yeah,
but I don't think
Biden's name never appeared. Never appeared anywhere.
No, Obama's didn't either. But that's the whole thing. I don't know if they have a list per se. I think they have affidavits. As far as the big thing is, what do they have on video? Because supposedly one of the theories you heard was that he recorded all these guys with these girls to use as blackmail. But also, Hawk did a great thing. That there is a Democratic congressman who's been looking into Epstein's money.
I got that. We're going to do that next.
That's very interesting because there's a lot of money, and where did it come from? I mean, the whole Les Wexler thing, that's a whole other wacky type thing. I mean, because I remember seeing on the documentary how he shook West down for a lot of money. A lot. So.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, yeah, Chris, I thank you for jumping in today, buddy. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you as always. Have a good day. See you later. You too, man. See ya. So all those things are very, very valid questions, right? So what we're talking about now is, and I'm going to save the last half an hour to do our Unexpected Angels for today. Then we're going to welcome Amira Barger at 10 a.m. Amira is going to help us. First of all, she's incredibly awesome, and I want to make sure that we're giving her enough time to talk about her background in communications and media literacy and media training, how she addresses and speaks to the topics of propaganda, disinformation, and misinformation, because we're living in it now. So what Chris was referencing was Senator Ron Wyden they're starting to get a lot of coverage connected to this statement that he made. I'll play the audio because he talks about what he said, and then I'll get into the reporting for you. This is interesting.
Last year, the Biden administration allowed our investigators to look at portions of the file. We did that at the Treasury building. Here is what it says. Treasury's Epstein file details, Mr. President, 4,725 wire transfers. Let me repeat that. 4,725 wire transfers, adding up to nearly $1.1 billion flowing in and out of just one of Mr. Epstein's bank accounts. If you ask me, that is more than 4,000 potential lines of investigation right there.
I would agree.
Hundreds of millions more flowed through other accounts. That's even a lot more to investigate. The file shows that Mr. Epstein used multiple Russian banks, which are now under sanctions, to process payments related to sex trafficking.
What do I always tell you, friends? What do I always tell you? Follow the money. Here's the story. Trump and his administration want to move on from Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier and offender who once associated with some of the world's richest and most powerful people. Some of Mr. Trump's most loyal supporters insist there is more to uncover. It's not just MAGA faithful who are refusing to let it go. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, the top Democrat on the powerful Senate Finance Committee, has been digging into Mr. Epstein's financial network for the past 3 years. Some members of his staff have viewed confidential files that shed light on the immense sums of money that they say Mr. Epstein moved through the banking system to fuel his vast trafficking network. In particular, filings by 4 big banks flagged more than $1.5 billion in transactions, including thousands of wire transfers for the purchases and sale of artwork for rich friends, fees paid to Mr. Epstein by wealthy individuals, and payments to numerous women, the Senate's office found. The filings came after Mr. Epstein was arrested in 2019 on trafficking charges. Large money transfers to individuals, foreign countries, or obscure companies are the kind of things that banks are supposed to be examining as potentially suspicious. Some of the Epstein money transfers disclosed in a report from JP Morgan Chase involved accounts at 2 Russian banks before those institutions were subject to U.S. sanctions. Do you remember the famous quote by Eric Trump? We get all the money that we need from Russia. Draw your own conclusions. Deutsche Bank, lots of Russian money funded through. Draw your own conclusions. I'm just saying. A few transactions were red flagged, were as much as $100 million. Mr. Wyden said his investigation into Mr. Epstein's finances had taken on new urgency now that the Trump administration was balking at releasing any of the information seized by the FBI. Although Mr. Trump has come out this morning and telling Pam Bondi to release stuff that's credible. So what's that going to look like? Right? I'll put this in the the mods will put this in the chat, you guys. Okay. Mr. Wyden said his investigation into Mr. Epstein's finances had taken on new urgency now that the Trump administration was balking at releasing any of the information seized by the FBI from Mr. Epstein's homes or information collected from the nation's banks. Like many Republicans on the far right, Mr. Wyden and a growing number of Democrats believe there are more details about Mr. Epstein that the federal government needs to reveal. Yeah, you think so? We felt from the beginning this was a follow the money case. This horrific trafficking operation cost Epstein a lot of money, and he had to get that money from somewhere. The bank records reviewed by Mr. Wyden's staff, called Suspicious Activity Reports, or SARs, are meant to be an early warning system for law enforcement about signs of illegal activity. As dictated by federal law, the reports are so confidential that banks can't even acknowledge filing them, and people who have seen the documents are under great constraint as to what they can say about them. Members of Mr. Wyden's staff provided an overview of the bank's reports to the New York Times based on the review of the filings. To some degree, Mr. Wyden is hamstrung by those rules, which is why he wants the Trump administration to make the reports available to Congress. Transparency, right? The most transparent administration ever? Full transparency? Okay. Why he wants him to make them available to Congress so members can review them and possibly issue subpoenas to the banks for more information. Even before the Justice Department announced last week it was closing the door on the investigation, Mr. Wyden had been pressing AG Bondi to turn over bank reports along with other information about wealthy individuals and financial institutions in Mr. Epstein's network. Mr. Trump, who was once friendly with Mr. Epstein, said this week that he would let Ms. Bondi decide which documents should be made public. He also dismissed his supporters who are calling for the release of the files and said the matter was old news. The Justice Department did not respond to a request for comment. Ms. Bondi has said she stands behind the department's memo that said no further disclosure of information was warranted. The banks that filed reports reviewed Mr. Wyden's team include J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Bank of New York, Mellon, all declined to comment except for Deutsche Bank, which said it regrets our historical connections with Jeffrey Epstein. One of the primary lenders for Donald Trump is, wait for it, Deutsche Bank. Okay. Again, probably just a coincidence. The confidential bank reports filed with the Treasury Department agency could be crucial because they provided the most comprehensive look at the enormous financing machine behind Mr. Epstein's trafficking operations in Manhattan, Florida, and in the U.S. Virgin Islands. To date, only bits and pieces of the financial transactions involving Mr. Epstein's network have come out through civil litigation and news reports. In this era of misinformation, these reports are the coin of the realm, Mr. Wyden said at the confidential bank reports. The reports reviewed by Mr. Wyden's team were filed by the banks months after Mr. Epstein's arrest in 2019 on trafficking charges and his subsequent passing. Normally, a bank is expected to file a suspicious activity report within 60 days of a bank spotting a questionable transaction, such as movements, signaling, money laundering, or trafficking. Thank you. Gary Coleman, executive director of the U.S. arm of the Transparency International, which focuses on illicit financing, said banks have to make a lot of assessments about a client before deciding to file SARs, including news reports. In 2018, Mr. Epstein pled guilty in Florida to a charge of soliciting prostitution from a teenage girl and received a modest jail sentence. We went through that whole thing yesterday with the prosecution agreement. Many of the wealthy men, celebrities, and politicians who associate with Epstein over the years have said in interviews or statements that they were unaware of the extent of his wrongdoing until he was arrested for the second time in 2019. It is unclear if more frequent and timely SAR filings would have made much of a difference with law enforcement, given the years of criticism over how authorities handled Mr. Epstein's investigation. Now, follow my logic here. So part of right-wing strategy, part of autocrats and fascist regimes is to discredit journalism, right? That there is a concerted effort to discredit every single news agency that says anything critical about the president. Wall Street Journal releases a story that supports a series of books and drawings, and there's evidence to back up the fact that he did in fact make my name is so I like to do drawings. If you know, you know. Now we've got the New York Times, and he's gone after all these institutions in the past, every single one, priming the pump. So when they are reporting on these stories, right? Priming the pump. So when they're reporting on these stories, immediately he can lean in on fake news. So when we reference this story reported on, thanks for making me feel old. Sorry, Alicia. My name is Simon. I like to do drawings. Anyway, like I said, I have millions of voices in my head. So the die has been cast. It is already fake news. It is already the radical leftists. It is already weaponization. It's a witch hunt out to get Mr. Trump. The question now, though, is how many people are still going to believe it, right? How many people are still going to believe it? Because we're seeing cracks. Nick Fuentes telling him to fuck you, podcast hosters, people demanding answers, MTG signing on to a bill for transparency. One of 9 Republicans have done the same thing. So it's not as easy to fall back on that argument anymore now, is it? And part of the whole fake news things we're going to be talking to Amira Barger about in about 20 minutes or so. Amira's on the West Coast, and when she said, hopefully we can talk around 10 o'clock. She's the author of The Price of Nice, and we're going to get into misinformation and propaganda and media training and how we can navigate through these things. I think it's really relevant now just because we've got so much going on. All right, I want to spend a little time talking about, let me do this. I want to thank you guys. Thank you, Brooke, for your $10, and Stephanie for your $5, and Dana for your $2. Thank you guys very, very much as you contribute to our show. We are, again, crowdfunded. You want to support the channel, you can do so at Factsstillmatter. All the various things are over there. Don't forget about subscribing. We are going to do a subscriber wheel spin. We may not be able to do that today because we want to make sure we can gather all subscribers through today. But if it's not today, it will definitely be on Monday. So thank you very much. If you want to consider subscribing, maybe now's a great time to do it. And don't forget about our gifting goal. All right. So I wanted to focus on young adults and kids who are doing things in and around the world who are, I would consider unexpected angels. So the term unexpected angels is just, I'm not even sure where in context it came from. I've used it with my kids in the past about how people show up in your life unexpectedly. Some that you know, some that you don't, some that you may never come in contact with again. I feel very proud to say that there's been a lot of unexpected angels in our community that have just shown up at the right time. The ability for us to connect people with other people, the ability to, to help develop relationships. And I've developed lifelong friends in this space for people showing up and people just going out there and doing something, as we talk about every single day. So I'm just going to read some names of some children and young adults that are out there doing the work, trying to make a difference, as however small in their communities, it still matters. Alexandria Villasenor, co-founder of the U.S. Youth Climate Strike. She was born in 2005 and founder of Earth Uprising. She's been striking regularly at the UN and won multiple leadership awards. Haven Coleman, born in 2006, co-executive director of U.S. Youth Climate Strike, actively organizing youth-led climate actions across the United States. This particular section is all about climate environmental activists. Greta Thunberg. Greta's been in our psyche for a long time, still doing the work. Began the Fridays for Future school strikes in 2018, inspiring global youth participation and influencing over 60 countries to commit to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Causing good trouble, getting arrested, calling truth to power. Sophia Kiani, born 2001, founded Climate Cardinals, a youth-led nonprofit translating climate content into many languages, youngest ever United States UN Youth Advisor, Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree. Kevin J. Patel, born in 2000, launched One Up Action, a youth climate justice nonprofit focused on marginalized communities, and founded the first ever Youth Climate Commission in Los Angeles County. Now we'll move into youth empowerment and civic engagement. Katie Eder, or Eder, E-D-E-R, co-founder of the Future Coalition, uniting over 200 youth organizations to drive U.S. climate strikes from 2019 to 2020. Earlier, founded Kids Tales, publishing stories written by kids in underserved regions. Jacob Brody, age 11, cancer survivor from Connecticut, founded Kids for Tolerance organization to help children safely discuss politics and ideology. Hosts empathy exchanges and provides resources for schools. Arts and community enrichment. Shelby Davis, Waterbury, Connecticut, student-born founder of Waterbury City Youth Theater, now in its 5th year. They offer free summer camps, inclusive productions, and just celebrated with a gala fundraiser. Eliza Leibowitz, age 15, from Long Island, inspired classmates to donate hundreds of toys to pediatric cancer patients via a Courage Cart at Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital, led by compassion, rooted in her friend's battle with cancer. That one hits. Whew. Damn. Okay. Community first responders in Houston, Texas, organized a grandstand fundraiser in J.C. Park to support Kerr County flood victims, selling crafts and baked goods with a goal of raising $15,000. Heartfelt event united hundreds and honored young flood victims. Jasmine Thomas Reed from Beaumont, Texas, organized Dance Camp 409, a free dance camp for girls ages 6 to 12, and donated masterclass proceeds to flood relief efforts. These are the people that we are fighting for. These are the people in our community, in the world around us, right? And so many of these stories are of young people doing these kinds of things. Setting up lemonade stands and donating all their profits. And you see, oftentimes it goes viral. And someone with money will say, "What's your cause?" And they'll match donations. Volunteering in your community, seeing a need. Young people in Texas. Young people in Texas recognizing the fact that I could have been at that camp, or I could have been one of those people, or I could have been a victim. So they just use what they're passionate about to make a difference. I'm going to read a little bit more of the story about the community first responders. Houston Children's mobilized to raise money for flood relief. This is reported on by the Houston Chronicle. Families approached the tables filled with colorful handmade bracelets, keychains, and baked goods tied with blue ribbons. Boxes with more wares waited under the table. Most of these items were made by children for a July 10th fundraiser for Kerr County flood relief. Flooding in Central Texas took at least 130 lives, with more than 100 people still missing in several counties as of Tuesday. These Houston children are aiming to raise $15,000, according to a poster displayed at the event and by their parents. Families in Northwest Houston wore blue to the fundraiser in J.C. Park in honor of 10-year-old Greta Toranzo, who attended nearby Sinclair Elementary and played softball with Timber Grove Sports Association. Several kids who attended lost other friends, including 9-year-old Molly DeWitt, 8-year-old Lucy Dillon. Flood took the lives of at least 37 children as of July 11th. Child psychologists advise it best to acknowledge one's feelings, make conversation age appropriate, and reassure kids when talking to children about the floods, the Austin American-Statesman reported. As part of processing this tragedy, 10-year-old Ellie Reynolds sold handmade bracelets on a family driveway earlier that week. Her mother, Caitlin, said, the kids called their fundraising effort the Grand Stand, and they have previously raised money for the Houston Food Bank and SPCA during school breaks. Most everything are bracelets made by kids and things that they make themselves and just pour their hearts into everything while they were trying to understand what happened. Children dropped off hundreds of bracelets all week ahead of the event, Reynolds said. One drop-off was accompanied by a note in a child's handwriting encapsulating what the opportunity means for children. I'm sending lots of prayers to the community. I'm so happy to have been able to make these bracelets. Two of the girls who started the Grand Stand are on the same softball team as Shannon Giordano's daughter. They sold 3D printed items, handmade soaps, quilts, and tablecloths. She spoke of the children they lost in their community and their soccer team. Quote, I think just having your children, letting them know that how much they're loved, and I think just having your children, letting them know how much they're loved, Giordano said, of how the community and children can be best served. That's what we've been doing at home, and living life and enjoying the things that these girls enjoy doing, continuing to show up and play the sports and continuing to just be part of the community and show up every day, that they're loved and and participate in the activities that these girls love to do. A group of rising 8th graders at Hogg and Frank Black middle schools managed tables, including one with keychains displayed atop a red, white, and blue table runner. They shared their sadness to the girls in their community that they lost, including Greta from their neighborhood. Kaylee Reed, a 13-year-old attending Hogg, said they were selling braided cloth bracelets in honor of Greta. This shit, you guys. This shit. This is the stuff that gives me hope. These are the things that, you... How do I want to say this? There are so many reasons to be scared and frustrated and to feel hopeless. But we are going to do this kind of stuff every Friday, right? Every single Friday, we are going to talk about things like this. And we're not going to I don't want to make it exclusive to Friday, because as these good stories come up, we'll share them. But we are going to be focused on unexpected angels. These kids, they just decided that, look, this could have happened to me. They're realizing that, right? So they make friendship bracelets. They make colorful pictures. They are there to show others that there is still a sense of humanity that exists out there, right? So these are the stories that we all need, right? These are the things that we need, right? These are the stories that we need to tell, that we want to share, whether it be Greta Thunberg or others or people that are involved in creating, climate acknowledgement as the communities that they love, especially in low-lying areas, are under threat from climate disasters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And here we are, right? We've got these young kids who are just trying to deal with an unfathomable tragedy. Friends of theirs, like literally swept away, that they'll never see again. And what do? They say, well, we're going to raise money for flood victims. We're going to sell bracelets. We're going to sell lemonade. We're going to draw pictures. We're going to bring the community together. Now, I'm happy that they feel, because you get that sense from someplace, right? So it makes me feel good that there are parents out there too that are doing that are showing their children how empathetic, how empathy works, and why it is so crucially important. It's crazy, right? So joy is a sense of resistance, right? So there are things that we can all do. This is why every single day you guys hear me close the show with do something. This is an example of doing something. It doesn't always have to be. Anyway, some of the comments today are crazy. It doesn't always have to be in response to a particular event, right? It can be something you decide to do on your own, whatever that might be. Whatever that might be, right? You could literally decide that you're going to go read to a neighbor. You could decide that, there might be somebody in your community that is struggling. Offer them their lawn. Bring them, maybe make it pizza night, and offer to spend time with somebody that you know might live alone. Or there could be something that you're really, really good at, and you might want to volunteer your time after school. Have you thought about reaching out to some of the teachers in your community and say, hey, can I create an Amazon wish list for you so that you can have the supplies that you need in your school because your school is cutting funding? These are all these kinds of things. And the reason that I think these things are so important is because we can show the next generation that they are too. So we can show people that these things matter. Kindness matters, empathy matters, understanding matters, compassion matters. And you really want to get a sense of examples of empathy and kindness and consideration. Watch kids. Watch children. They should be our examples. Let them teach us. Let them show us empathy. They're not born racist bigots. They're not. They're not born. That is something that they're taught. And they see it. Remember, they talk about how children, they shadow or model their parents. So chances are, if your children are, either being raised with a particular type of belief, whether that be patriarchal or, the nuclear family, trad wives, whatever that might be, to each his own, that is likely going to continue. Or if you're not paying attention enough and you get your kid red-pilled, that's problematic. That's something we're going to talk to Amira about as well. Sorry, but selling bracelets is not near enough. Adults need to do something to protect our kids. Marge, I understand what you're saying, but to say selling bracelets is not near enough, that's exactly the point, though. We have to learn from the people that are realizing it's not about anything other than I want to do something kind for somebody. I want to do something kind for someone. I want to show people that there's ways that we can do this. And think about the people that we talk about on the list that are doing the work from a climate perspective. Let's talk about Jasmine Thomas Reed from Beaumont, Texas. Let's talk about Jasmine, okay? Beaumont native Jasmine Thomas Reed was back home on Saturday, bringing her professional dance and cheer knowledge to young girls, teens, and adults for the third episode of Dance Camp 409. Reed, a Westbrook graduate who performed as a dancer and cheerleader for the Houston Rockets and the Texans, started the camp to give back to others in her hometown that share a love of dance and a desire to one day go pro. Saturday's camp started with a 4-hour cheer dance focus session for girls aged 6 to 12. The group of 47 was split by age group, learning on-trend and always sassy new routines under the tutelage of Reed and fellow Houston Athletics pros Ariel Coleman and Hannah Perry. The afternoon was dedicated to a masterclass for those ages 13 and above with intermediate to advanced skills, with Reed, Perry, and Coleman working together to quickly teach a performance-ready, show-stopping dance by the session's end. This year, they weren't just dancing for the love of the dance, though. They were dancing for a greater cause. Reed posted on a Facebook update days before the camp. In the wake of the tragic flooding of Kerr County that claimed over 100 lives, 170 still plus missing, Reed announced that all of the masterclass fee proceeds will be donated directly to flood relief. The money was sent specifically to TexSAR, the Wimberley-based Texas search and rescue team, whose professionally trained volunteer first responders deploy in times of crisis throughout the state. something that they're good at, something that they excel at, a passion of theirs, and they turn it into an opportunity to do something. We all have our own inherent skills, whatever they may be, whatever they are. Don't diminish yourself. Don't think that making bracelets isn't enough. It's about doing something, right? It's about doing something. I look at it as the ripple in the pond vision. That works for me, right? One little pebble, and that, right? Little acts of kindness. Activism, those kinds of things. You hear me say it all the time. Activism is a muscle that you have to exercise. We know what we live in every day, guys. We know what we're facing. We see it every single day, and we can't change it all overnight. But if we just give up and say that, fuck humanity, then what are we all doing here every single day? Right? What are we doing if we're not realizing that there are things that we can be doing? I really am nervous about young men. There's reporting about how the manosphere perhaps is cracking a little bit. I want to see if I can find that sound because I think it's important to play now as we're talking about this topic. See if I can find it. Somewhere I have it, I believe. Maybe I don't. That's okay. The point is that how are we going to respond? Yeah, Joy's resistance. Thank you. How are we going to respond? It's one thing to vote, and you guys know how I feel about that. I'm nervous about 2024. I'm nervous going into 2028. There's going to be something the left is going to find. It's going to be something divisive. I don't know what the fuck it is, but I'm worried about it. I'm tired of having to remind people why human rights is so important. It's boring on a bumper sticker. I get that, but the left has got to quit their fucking pearl clutching. If you're going to try to find the perfect candidate, then you're no different than anybody else. You're not going to find perfect. You need to find someone that you can support, and then you need to be willing to do the work. It's not just be about vote. Okay, I'm done. I did my part. No, that's not enough. It's just not enough. I want everybody to think of this in terms of the friendship bracelet. Are you going to make a friendship bracelet for somebody else, or are you just going to expect other people to wear one? Right? So I want to encourage people to just think differently and then use the motivation of young children in particular, teenagers, even adults who are using the ability to use their skills in dance, to organize, to raise money. It's really, really important. It's really important, friends, especially now. Okay, a couple things. Let me see if I can find. I do want to see if I can find that sound because I think it's kind of interesting to hear. Do I have that still? Maybe I don't. Hang on a second. I want to talk about Gavin Newsom a little bit. I want to talk about him because he's really been showing up quite a bit lately. He has been part of some interesting podcast discussions, some good, some bad, as we can dissect those. But his statements that have been going directly after Mr. Trump is pretty wild. And this is Gavin Newsom. A couple of things that he said here that are interesting. A couple of bits of sound. Here we go.
Forgive me, I know he's the president of the United States. He calls me new scum. Come on. How to explain that to my kid? My kid's friends call him my kid's new scum. I was called that in 7th grade, but not by a 79-year-old. Model better goddamn behavior, man. Just toughness. It's a weakness masquerading as strength.
Are you gearing up for a 2028 run?
I'll tell you, the more Trump keeps doing what he does, the more compelled I am to think about it. I've never felt more outrage, more anger towards the actions and often this individual than I do now. Blown away the Democrats' obsession with just that sort of perfect person who's going to save the day. Meanwhile, we're not doing the hard work. It's narrative. It's not facts. It's who can dominate the conversation. And this guy's a master at this. I think he's a bit of a flim-flammer. He's a carny from my humble perspective.
So you're not going to run?
As it relates to the presidency, who the hell knows? That's fate.
Interesting. That's a bit of an acknowledgement, I would say. And then this other piece of sound here, I think this is funny because this was just, I think it was just a presser he did yesterday. This is wild. He's angry, and I don't blame him. We are all angry. And I've gone back and forth on my opinion on Gavin Newsom. He's made some questionable decisions. He's been a bit inconsistent in his support for the LGBTQI community. He's done a lot to advance civil rights for that community in his state. He's done some things that I don't agree with in regards to his approach specifically to the trans community. This is what we're going to be faced with, though. These are the kind of decisions that we want. If we're going to be looking for perfection, we're never going to find that. There is no such thing as a perfect candidate. People want to say Barack Obama. Nope, not nearly progressive enough for me. Not even close. I did not like the fact that he diminished the people in Flint, Michigan by going to that famous press conference where he drank the tap water. He had to change his tune on same-sex marriages, which I'm glad he did. Didn't fight hard enough for Obamacare and instead had to give in to Republicans. Lots of things we can be critical about, right? Lots of things we can be critical about, and we weren't, and we should be. Similarly here.
Taxpayer. I don't like to see my money wasted like this. There's no fiscal conservatives left. Ha! They proved that in the big, beautiful betrayal. But this is comedy. Donald Trump waxing on about the Fed chair today and cost overruns on a new building. How about the hundreds of millions of dollars he's burned just to try to sear in your mind that he's some tough guy because he didn't get enough hugs from his parents?
Yeah. So he's gearing up for, I would expect within the next 4 to 6 months that he will officially declare his candidacy for the presidency in 2028. So then the question becomes, how dedicated is our people on the left and independents to realizing that although far from perfect, he wouldn't be a bad choice. A lot of it then has to do with what the complexion of the House and Senate looks like too, right? He doesn't have my vote yet. He's got to prove it. He's got to earn it. I want to see who else is in the field. He's not as progressive. He's not as progressive enough for me, quite frankly. But at the end of the day, it's the 4th largest economy in the world. Their business innovation sector, they are the economic engine for our country. I would certainly like to see who he would have on a short list of potential nominees for the Supreme Court. If it came to that, I'd like to hear some of that. I'd like to see who he'd like to think about for his vice president. I want to hear top line legislative agenda issues, what that looks like. I want to press people on, I don't want little bites of the apple when it comes to healthcare. Don't want it. Talk about universal healthcare. Talk about legislation for firearms reform that the overwhelming majority of America wants, right? So it sadly in our country right now, it may take a white man to bridge us to the next gap from the presidential perspective. I don't want to see that. I'm just trying to be realistic. Just trying to be realistic. I'm just trying to, I know who I would like from a policy perspective. Sign me up with democratic socialism. Sign me on the fuck up, which we need to change the name. And by the way, Mr. Trump is now threatening to take the citizenship away from Zohran Mamdani and Rosie O'Donnell and a few other people because he's just scared. He's just scared. And I think what we're seeing with Gavin Newsom is just that, calling it out, right? And that is how you go after a bully. You just bully them. Now, Mr. Trump advocating for basically squirreling away 5 more seats in the House. You've heard him admit it. Just say, "Oh yeah, totally. We're just gonna redistrict our way to the House majority." If Gavin Newsom has the ability to do the same thing in California and he doesn't do it, then he's not gonna get my vote. You got to earn it. Show the fuck up. Remind the people what you're about. Tell them every day that these are the things that should matter to you. Use the success of California, right? Don't let them lie about the wildfires. That was ridiculous. Every lie that they told, every single. You guys want me to run for president? I'm sorry. There's too many skeletons. Nothing seriously bad, but just a few. But thank you for that. I appreciate that. The lies that they told about fires, it was just complete freaking nonsense. And actually, Gavin Newsom called that out on one one of these statements. Let me see if I can find that sound. Oh, by the way, this is hilarious. Now that I've thought this about, now that I'm reminded of this, on July 8th of 2023, from the official X account of Donald Trump Jr., show us all the Epstein client list now. Why would anyone protect those scumbags? Ask yourself this question daily, and the answer becomes very apparent. Oh, no. That's not a good look. Let's see here. Do I have that other piece of sound from Gavin Newsom? I think I do. Here you go. No, not that one. Oh, and then there's this. This is from our boy Elon, right? Remember Elon? Here you go. This is funny. You guys will appreciate this one. Again, something that didn't age well.
I think part of why Kamala's getting so much support is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public.
Uh-oh.
And some of those billionaires behind Kamala are terrified of that outcome.
Agreed.
I think part of...
Agreed. All right. So I am happy to announce I see that Amira has requested. So let me bring this up. And then let me bring our special guest up. I'm going to change the background so I can give you full publicity. Now, good morning. Now, I know you had mentioned to me that this is your first time going live. So I got you. Okay. Don't you sweat it. I got you. I'm going to do this first. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to change the background setup so I can give you full publicity for what we're doing here. Stand by. There we go. Good morning to you. Thank you, first of all, for getting up so early. I appreciate you willing to join us. So, friends, I'd like to introduce you to Amira Barger. Amira and I have never spoken, but we've communicated through TikTok messengers, through direct message, through text, through email. And when I reached out to you initially, I was like, wow, we swim in the same waters. And I was so excited. Before I get into our discussion today, I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. I've been plugging you all week, and I know people are excited. So please, and again, thank you. Tell us about you, and I'm excited to talk to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out. I was elated when you did and loved what you're doing here and what you represent. But I'm Amira Barger, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm new to the TikTok game. I only downloaded it this year and have just started sharing a little bit about what I get to do in the world every single day. I am a behavioral communications consultant, a professor, and an author, and I love to help impart to people tools that help them to understand the world and people and their relationships so that they can make more informed decisions about how they choose to show up, what they choose to believe, and what they choose to question. So I'm glad to be here and to be in conversation.
And I know your background. First of all, the chat's blowing up over your earrings, so they're totally excited to see those on your face.
We love it. We love it.
They do love it. So I sent you, you may recall, I sent you a series of questions, so we can go in a bunch of different directions. My team knows that these are conversations that I just genuinely love. We talk about, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but when I started on TikTok like 4 years ago, I initially wanted to test out some stand-up comedy because that's one of the things that I do on the side. And then I was just like, wow, there is a lot of misinformation and disinformation and propaganda in this space, and it's totally unregulated. I have a background in politics. I was trained in media. I was in media for about 25 years. I served in government. So I'm thinking I might find a space here to be able to talk about that. Thus, Factsstillmatter was born. That's kind of how the story started. So because our backgrounds are similar, I work in communications. I've been a C-suiter. I've been in charge of the communication pillars in organizations for a Fortune 500 company. What was it that inspired you to kind of get into the work that you're doing now?
Oh, I've always been in communications from the start of my career, but I didn't start out in my undergrad career that way. So I was actually a pre-med student for many, many years, actually through my junior year. So if we go back a little bit to some of my background, I am the second eldest of 8 children, 4 boys, 4 girls, no twins, no adoptions, not a blended family. My parents just really like kids. But that's important because I actually grew up on the tiny, tiny island of Guam, USA. It's U.S. territory. tiny, 30 miles long, 8 miles wide. And my parents were actually missionaries. That's why we lived there. And, you know, when you're a missionary, my parents' job, they were certainly interested in helping people with their faith. But before you can ever do that, you just have to help people with their basic human needs. And oftentimes that would be things like healthcare. And so that was always this huge gap and something that I wanted to help address. And I knew I wanted to try to make good trouble and put good in the world through the healthcare gaps I was seeing. And so I was a pre-med student, and I thought, that's how I'm going to impact the world. I want to be a physician, and I really want to help kids specifically with health. And I was taking an intro to business class, you know, one of those required prerequisites when you're in college.
Yeah.
And I had this amazing professor who is now a dear, dear friend, Bonnie Stahoviak. And in her intro to business class, she was also introducing us to the world of nonprofits. And I had never considered that nonprofits was a path. I actually thought all of those people were these wonderful saintly volunteers, and didn't realize that actually many of them, no, that is their job. They work there. There are many volunteers. But this professor noticed that I had a knack for communication. So the way I presented information, and I think a lot of that did come from my upbringing. You know, when you are a pastor's kid, you're thrust in front of audiences often, and you have to talk to people and present information, and you're always talking to adults and people older than you. And so communications was always something that was just a part of my upbringing and my life, and something, you know, that I love to do is to build connection with the people around me through communications. And certainly, you know, growing up the way I did, I had a lot of opportunities to debate, formal or informal,
Sure.
and push back on ideas. So that's how I came to communications in my junior year, via this intro to business class, and a professor who really saw me and saw a talent that I had, realized, you know, there are other ways that I can make good trouble in the world. And, you know, in my undergrad program, pre-med, I realized that the realities of being a physician and the idea were very different. And so I was happy to find something that I was both passionate about, communications, and that could help me help people and put good into the world and make some good trouble. So I switched in my junior year, which was wild, which meant that I was taking like 24 credit semesters the last 2 years of college, and some JC classes on the side just to graduate on time. But that's how I came into communications. I was really influenced by a person who is now a dear friend, and she had opened my eyes and world to see that I could help people with a tool that I think is often not thought of as a tool for justice or a tool for progress. I think sometimes people forget about communications studies and the importance of what it gives people in critical thinking and framing, and even how you just see yourself. So that's how I got here.
That's fascinating. I saw, looks like you might have some kindred spirits in the chat, because I've seen some people comment saying, oh yeah, I was pre-med. I totally get it. Completely get what you're saying. So that resonated with people. In some of our brief conversations that we had back and forth through chat, we talked about, you know, media literacy and the fact that you're into media training. And I'm curious as to your perception of how you would describe media literacy, and do you see an opportunity to really invest from a public education perspective into more curriculum geared towards media literacy?
1,000% yes to that latter half. Media literacy today isn't only about knowing how to read the news. I think of it as understanding who made the message, why did they make it, and how it's meant to make you feel and then act, because we act based on our feelings. And it's less, can you find the main idea, and more, what's the agenda behind the idea and who benefits if we all believe that agenda and message being fed to us. And so I think of media literacy as emotional literacy plus critical thinking. Right? In comms, we always talk about the think, feel, do, and say. And the think and the feel are really important, because what you think influences what you feel and therefore what you do. And so emotional literacy is just as important as critical thinking. And that's why I teach my students the way I do, and why I talk about behavioral science and behavioral communications, because, you know, I pull from our friends in anthropology, sociology, psychology, because of the think and the feel part before we ever get to the do and the say part. And especially today in a world where trust is a currency and manipulation is right now, I believe, being dressed up as civility. We have to help people understand the think and the feel before we worry about the do and the say.
It's interesting you say that too, Amira, because we have conversations many, many times with people who everything is connected to their emotions about a particular issue. So void of facts, right? So the emotion, I feel this person made me feel like the economy was better 7 years ago, or I feel like we're going to be safer. So how do you help people navigate through the the respect for their feelings, but getting them to understand the facts behind it a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, emotion and identity are definitely a part of how misinformation spreads. They are fuel to fire. And I find that people don't share false stories or misinformation only because they're misinformed. They share them because what you're saying, the story feels true to who they are or who they want to be, right? It taps into identity, how they see themselves, whether that's seeing self as a good parent, as a patriot, as a person of faith, as someone who's in the know. And, you know, in communications, we might call that motivated reasoning, right? We are more likely to believe things that protect our sense of self, and we'll ignore, reject facts that threaten that sense of self, that emotional part. And that's why throwing more data at someone rarely changes their mind. We talk about this in communications and in marketing, and salespeople know this well all the time. If the truth feels like a personal attack, people will shut down. And the key is, you know, that truth has to feel like belonging, right? If we want to counter misinformation and disinformation, we can't only correct it. It takes storytelling, empathy, and connection, not shame, not superiority, but narrative that makes people feel seen while gently challenging what's false is a huge part. And that's why I talk a lot to people about proximity and relationship, because I can throw facts and figures at you of, you know, the facts of how many people passed in COVID, for example, and why the vaccine is important. I can give you all these numbers and the data and the science and send you a study to read and some research and blah, blah, blah. And for some people that motivates, definitely. But for other people, it's about the story and the proximity and relationship. So another, for example, is my father-in-law is a Trump-loving Southerner. And, you know, I can give him the facts and the figures all day. But one thing that, you know, my husband and I agree to is that it's his job to work on his father and try to impart different information and counter that misinformation, because he's in closer proximity or relationship to him, right? He's the person that his dad is most likely to listen to, least likely to disown or get upset with. And I tell people, whether it's in the workplace or in media or in any scenario, you have to consider who's closest in relationship to that person, who is that person most likely to emotionally resonate with, seek empathy from, receive stories from, and want connection with. That's the best person to counter misinformation and counter disinformation. So proximity and relationship matters a lot in trying to debunk all the misinformation that's out there. And there's that emotional component to that. It's all about relationships.
Are you familiar with the podcast, The Necessary Conversation, by chance?
I'm not, but I can tell I probably like it.
Yeah, so it's a family. It's mom and dad and their two kids. Mom and dad basically mainline Newsmax all day long. They admit it. Haley, their daughter, is self-professed communist, and their son Chad, who's kind of the host of the show, would consider himself a moderate Democrat, right? Okay. So they have these conversations, and the reason I bring it up is based on what you said, the dynamic with your father-in-law. So what they've agreed that they use this platform, their podcast, to talk politics, and then they don't talk about it anywhere else. So that when they can get together, they can have a conversation about dinner or the weather or football. So they can disengage from. They use the podcast as a tool. And I like what you said specifically about the persons that are in closest proximity, whether it be geography or the emotional connection or whatever that might be. The problem that we see, I'm sure you would agree, is the division in families because of maybe it's because of that, right? Like I always say in our space, and I mentioned to you that I'm a true blue communist from Vermont, an accomplice, right? I always talk about how I'm fortunate because I don't have family members that are red hat wearing Trumpers. I'm fortunate. I have lost friends because of that, but we speak to people every single day whose families are fractured because of this, and I'm not ready yet to reach across the table to break bread for people who are voting against human rights.
Oh yeah.
So that family dynamic. So can you give any advice to people who are in that space that you just described that are struggling? Because I don't know what to do. Right. How do I navigate through this?
I don't know if I'd call it advice because I'm living it right now and I'm no expert.
Yeah.
I have disowned some family members. There are family members I don't talk to anymore. I think we're halfway there with my father-in-law. It feels like we're not going to come to a place of productive conversation any longer.
Sure.
And I'm a firm believer in holding boundaries. I think that when there are people who proactively show up in the world making choices that deeply harm others, right? No one can say that they didn't know anymore. I'm sorry. Like we've had this person that the seat holder, and we'll refer to them only that way, that seat holder has been there before. The current occupant has been there before, and it's very clear what their agenda is and what the agenda of those around them is. And so everything from the racism to the xenophobia to all the phobias and the isms that this administration is upholding, they're not surprises. No one can say they didn't know. The proof is in the pudding. The writing has been on the wall. And now you're making an active choice in terms of who you align with, and you're harming people that I love. In many cases, you're harming yourself, which is wild to watch and to see. And I have cut people off for that reason of, it's clear to me that you cannot be moved. And there are some people that cannot be moved. So if I gave one piece of advice, that's what I would tell people. And I wrote about this for MSNBC in December around the holidays, because that's when many people like myself had to contend with these family members. And for a final time, we broke bread. But that's often where these conversations come up. Whether your racist uncle or your racist father-in-law is at the holiday table. And I said, the first step is to realize that some people cannot be moved. Some people cannot be moved. And I think when you come to that level of acceptance, that the answer here might be simply walking away, cutting ties, and holding that boundary, that can be for me at least, it was a very freeing realization and recognition of, I try so hard because I do this work of shifting people's perception and mind. And I tried to do that with so much family. And you just realize some people cannot be moved. They're committed to the disinformation. They're committed to the one thing about this seat holder they believe is true and that will be good and useful to them and to their life. And they don't care about anyone else. And they put on those blinders and they have this narrow view until it's on their doorstep. And that's not how I choose to live my life. There are people I will never know and I will never meet who are impacted by the way I vote and show up in the world. I care about those people. There are some people who don't show up in the world that way. They're like, I don't know that person. I don't care. I only care about what's happening to me right here, right now. That's a choice. And so some of those people are realizing that today. Right now, it is on many people's doorsteps. We saw many teachers in the South who said, yeah, I voted for that current seat holder, but I didn't know he was going to hurt my children, my students, my kids. I didn't know he meant us. Or people who are married to immigrants who said, I didn't know they were going to harm my spouse and take them and my kids and ship them off. And now that it's on their doorstep, they suddenly care.
Yeah, we very well said. And by the way, seat holder, I think we're going to make a T-shirt. I love that. So this wasn't a question that I initially introduced you, that I sent to you, but I was thinking about this because of the situation with the Epstein controversy this week, and I've always been curious as to what is there going to be something that's really going to divide MAGA? Like I thought maybe it was going to be some of the Medicaid cuts just because of the fact that the majority of rural voters use Medicaid, rural hospitals, the red swath in our country. Are you surprised? Let me ask it in two questions. How ironic that it has to do with a sexual controversy that might be the thing that divides MAGA. That's a whole different conversation.
Right.
But are you surprised, or what will you be watching as more of this information either comes available or more lies are told about it?
I don't know if I'm surprised. I feel like I've stopped being surprised. Which is really sad, is that it's like anytime something happens, I'm like, well, of course they did. Of course that happened. Of course that's what's true in this moment. So I don't know if I'm surprised. It is though interesting to me. And I think down the line, we're going to have to study the mind of MAGA. Like, I really want several people to do multiple studies on just the mindset of those people, the brain chemistry to this social and cultural elements of how people make choices and what upsets them. Because if there was an element that was surprising to me, it is like, well, there's so many terrible things that have happened that he's done, that he's been involved in. And something about this list is really angering to people. And I don't know quite what that is. I want to unpack it and I want to understand like the different elements of it, that this is the thing that they might link arms in. That's what's, I think, surprising to me, if anything, of this being the one thing of the many atrocities that could have upset people. I'm hearing applause.
Yeah, that's a TikTok thing. I know, there's all kinds of stuff that's crazy. I have to do a little thing here. I guess my argument to that would be, well, first of all, I think it's because of the promises made. So don't forget, Trumpism was fueled by conspiracies, lies, propaganda, disinformation. And the one common thread that has gone throughout all of Trumpism for the past decade or so, wow, that's crazy to even think about. Yeah, a decade, has been the ability to go after the deep state, to blow the cover off of the deep state. So you got unification in all those circles, repeated by right-wing echo chambers, prominent podcasters, those that were funded by Russian state television, for example, those guys. So now that they're here, the expectation is they're going to get the goods on all the people that are participating in these crimes against children. And now that list has been kept from them. So are they starting to think that, wait a second, it's either there was never a list and we were lied to, or somebody that we really like may be on said list? I feel like that's where the division comes from. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. +1.
+1, exactly. All right, I want to kind of talk about disinformation, misinformation, and propaganda a little bit, because I did a show on this topic. Propaganda we'll put over there for just a second. The disinformation, how would you describe the difference between disinformation and misinformation, especially as it relates to what we see now?
Yeah. To me, misinformation is wrong, but can be well-meaning. So I think of it like, if I were to show up and tell a group of kids that the sky is blue because it reflects the ocean, that's not true. Science tells us otherwise, but I didn't wake up today thinking, let me go harm some kids and tell them some lies, right? But I am misinformed, and I am now sharing the misinformed beliefs that I hold. I really believe them. I think the sky is blue because it reflects the ocean. Someone told me that one day, and that's what I think. So I'm going to go tell some kids that. That's misinformation to me. So it's wrong, it's incorrect, and you're sharing correct information, but I don't know that you woke up to be anything other than well-meaning. Disinformation is wrong on purpose. It's intentional. And that matters because the fix isn't the same, right? One requires education on the misinformation piece. The other needs significant disruption. And, you know, if you were to think of it like gossip, like misinformation is repeating a rumor that you thought was true. Disinformation is starting the rumor because you really wanted to hurt someone. And you don't handle those two things, you know, punitively in the same way. It's a very different response. And, you know, even in my book, I talk about well-meaning people, especially those trying to appear neutral, polite, or open-minded, can accidentally become messengers for really harmful ideas. And they'll share disinformation not because they believe it, but because they think they're being fair or balanced. And, you know, for examples, they might say things like, you know, I'm not saying it's true, I'm just asking questions. Or, you know, some people are saying this, shouldn't we be open to all sides? Or, you know, what about blah, 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 unrelated topic. And that is laundering disinformation through niceness. It's making something toxic seem palatable, and it gives harmful claims a pass under this pretense of like curiosity and civility. I'm just trying to, you know, hear both sides, and I'm just asking questions to learn more. And that's dangerous because it spreads lies while protecting the person that is spreading them and keeps them from being held accountable. And I think we hear this a lot from far right influencers in that cult over there, right? Who use what seem like innocent questions or whataboutisms to distract and deflect and discredit. You know, a common one I hear, because I'm a Black woman, is, you know, instead of addressing police brutality, someone will say to me, well, what about Black on Black crime, right? Or when people bring up, you know, I'm not saying it's true, I'm just wondering, you know, could the COVID vaccine have caused all this infertility that we're seeing? And first of all, what massive amounts of infertility are you even talking about? What evidence do you have to cite that? But those aren't genuine questions coming from people, right? They're these rhetorical traps that people use and are designed to cast doubt, to muddy the waters, to stall progress, to stop, you know, genuine conversation and dialogue. And when nice people repeat them without examining the intent or the source, they help to spread that damage, whether they mean to or not. And you still, whether or not you meant to, you still need to be held accountable for, you know, the impact that your choices and your words in this world have.
Right. So to kind of summarize, the disinformation side would be intentionally sharing information that you know is not true. Misinformation would be somebody not necessarily intending to share it, but they are still, both are dangerous. Both are incredibly dangerous, right? Yeah. So what age, first of all, we're speaking to Amira Barger. Amira is the author of The Price of Nice. You can find the link, by the way, which is in the link tree that is in my bio. You want to tell people briefly what Price of Nice is about?
Yes. So this book really is sort of a outpouring of the last, you know, almost 40 years of unpacking the niceness I was told would, you know, make life better, get me ahead. And what I'm doing in this book is unpacking our cultural obsession with niceness and talking about it as a harmful social construct. You know, I think many of us are socialized and brought into this world to sit pretty, play nice people get ahead. And I think that that's really harmful. I think that niceness is a social construct, which is like any other social construct, just a made up rule, like race, like gender, like money. Just made up things. They're not inherently true, but collectively, they're things we collectively agree to and collectively perpetuate. And I talk about the antithesis of nice not being mean. I'm not asking people to go out there and be mean and whatever. That's not the goal. The antithesis of nice that I talk about and write about in the book is what I call nerve. And it's, to me, it's the audacity to challenge, to disrupt, to ask genuine questions, and to say, you know, the status quo, the systems that we have today, who does it work for? Who was it created in mind with? And for a lot of us, we were not in mind when these things were created. And for those people who hold the most power and the most privilege now, I talk about they want us to be nice. It's manufactured consent, as Noam Chomsky writes about. It's programming. They want us to stay in our neatly curated lanes so that they can maintain a status quo that keeps them in power and keeps them with that ability to hoard all of the things. And so niceness to me is harmful because the stakes are too high. And I think the stakes are, and I don't think it's hyperbolic to say, the stakes are our humanity and dignity if we continue to just stay in the neatly curated lanes that have been handed to us instead of asking bigger and better questions.
Yeah, that just triggered about 9 million questions I want to ask you, but I'll let my ADHD keep me focused here. I'm curious. I know you you teach at the collegiate level. Is it all freshmen through seniors? Is it a variety of classes that you?
It is a variety of classes. It's some undergrad, graduate students, and then a lot of professional students. Actually, especially when I do a lot of this media training and things at the college level, it's a lot of executives who are they tapped on the shoulder voice for their particular organization or cause.
That's kind of, I asked that. That's kind of what I do. I mean, I do executive level coaching. I was a C-suiter. I have media training in my background. So that's why I love this conversation. So again, thank you very much. The reason I asked that about the variety of ages, specifically, undergrad, grad, is because I'm curious if you have seen an impact of the manosphere and the red pill effect. If you've seen that more recently, has it been gradual for you? I'm just wondering because it relates to the misinformation topic that we were just discussing and Charlie Kirk on college campuses and things like that. Like I am so aware of the manosphere with a 24, 21-year-old boy and a soon-to-be 18-year-old girl. We have these conversations about red pilling. So I'm wondering if you've seen it more or less on your campus. Is it going in the wrong direction? I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Well, tell me, I don't know what the manosphere means. What is
Okay, the manosphere, I'm glad you asked. The manosphere is what's been created by, think about somebody like Andrew Tate, right? So an influential voice in the red pill space, attracting young men in particular, alpha, making sure that women know their place. There's a lot of grape apologists. That's a term that's been coined to cover all of it. And the red pill effect basically is the matrix mindset, right?
Yeah.
Here's the red pill. Take the red pill. You'll be an alpha. You don't want to be associating with weak beta men who are liberals. Certainly don't want to, you don't want to promote women's value in society. That's kind of 100,000-foot perspective as to what the manosphere is.
Got it.
So I guess then red pilling would be people told that Charlie Kirk's, Andrew Tate's, Tim Pool, Donald Trump's way to approach society is what's best. So maybe you haven't seen that a lot on your campus. I don't know. Exactly.
Gross.
So I'm concerned about it because I want to get out ahead of it early, like we discussed about how a desire for media literacy taught at middle school level, high school level, to help avoid some of these disinformation pitfalls that we're bumping into. But the power of the red pill and the manosphere is real.
It is real.
And it's growing.
Yeah, it is growing. We do see it a lot. And what's interesting is even in my day job in communications and working with corporations, one of the things that we study a lot and take a look at and talk to, we talk to a lot of Gen Z, and we're studying a lot of their behaviors. And one thing that has been concerning to me, not only on the college campus, but in my day job and the Gen Zers that we're talking to, is that there are, in particular, Gen Z males who are very much taking the red pill and falling into these traps of the Charlie Kirks and that this is the way of the world and everybody's taking everything from us. And not to say that none of those concerns are valid and that young men don't feel like, they don't have as much opportunity or whatnot. And whether or not that's true, we can debate on a different day, but I'm sure there's some iota of validity to some of their concerns, but I definitely see more and more that they are willing to believe the lies that everyone else is your enemy. And I think back to that Lyndon B. Johnson quote, I'm going to butcher this, but something along the lines of like, if you can convince the lowest or poorest white man that he's better than the best colored person, he won't notice you're like pickpocketing him.
Picking his pocket. Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what's happening here, is that they're pitting people against one another. Of all these people over here are stealing and taking something from you that was meant to be yours. Your legacy is no longer yours. And first of all, then I would question is like, well, why is it your legacy? Like, who decided that? And what does that even mean? But to answer your question, yes, I am seeing it a lot. It's very concerning, especially with Gen Z, because I was hopeful with Gen Z that more than not that they would be a generation where even if it wasn't in my lifetime, they would change things for us, because I do think that they have had more exposure to different identities and a more multicultural, polycultural world than others grew up with, whether you're a boomer or Gen Z. Just they have a much less homogenous life. Their friends are of all different ilks, and their experiences and their access to information and critical thinking tools and skills. And I think some of that will still be true. I do think that they will help us and lead the world differently. But on the other end, we're seeing that they are very easily being roped into the Charlie Kirk isms and things of the world of someone has taken something from you. Your legacy is now gone and tainted. And the other thing I want to say before I get is you mentioned middle school and high school. And yes, so I actually sit on a board of a nonprofit called the Journalistic Learning Initiative. And I think you'd love them if you haven't heard of them. But yeah, they go into middle schools and high schools, and they provide English teachers and journalism teachers in the schools with curriculum that gives students the same tools and training that journalists would get, that helps to improve their critical thinking. And so, going back to the kids, and at a young age, we have to impart the critical thinking skills that too often people don't get until they go to college, if they go to college, right? And that's fully being attacked right now. People saying that college isn't helpful, don't do that. They want to shut us down, right? And so we've got to give kids the critical thinking skills so they know how to push back, ask bigger, better questions, and really when someone says something audacious, kind of go, I don't know about that. I have a few questions to ask.
Which is why I'm glad you said that, which is why I asked the question earlier about if this is going to be the crack in the armor around MAGA, the Epstein situation, because then maybe some will say, well, if they lied to about this, maybe they lied to us about other things as well. Like, exactly. Well, and you bring up an interesting topic, and this is one of the questions that I asked you specifically about credibility of media. Right. So as we're trying to navigate through this, as Steve Bannon puts it, this muzzle velocity of disinformation that comes flying at them at 1,000,000 miles an hour. He talked about how we'll just throw out so much shit into the world that eventually some things will stick, and we'll get a few things done that we want to accomplish without people knowing about it. Right. I believe in the integrity of journalism. I always have. I believe that there are credible journalists out there that get swept up into the fake news debate and everything else. And we certainly know that Fox, for example, and Newsmax and OAN are not credible news sources. So what would be your advice to people who are trying to navigate through the hellscape that is the media landscape? And part two, can we gain trust back in some of those democratic institutions like the press, for example, and how long is it going to take?
Yeah. I think, yes, I'm always hopeful that there is a world where we can gain trust back, and trust is iterative, and it's like many things in this life, a forever journey. So yes, I think we can get back there, but it's going to take a lot more intention and more bravery from those who have the power and those who are in the seats that are the faces that we see and that we hear from. And, a lot of them have, including, people whose shows just got canceled for speaking truth about certain things.
Right.
Stephen Colbert.
Exactly. Unbelievable, right? Unreal.
Unbelievable, and also not unbelievable, right? Like I said, I stopped being surprised. But to your question about the media landscape, so one thing I was thinking about is that a lot of today's media rewards certainty and not curiosity. And I think that's part of the problem, right? There are so many clicks that come from outrage, not nuance. And, you know, they're looking for eyes on TV. They're looking for numbers. And so they go with whatever is salacious as opposed to what is maybe nuanced or true or interesting or deep. And when I think about it from my hat as a communications professor, I just think about how it reinforces like availability bias, right? People believe what they see very often. So if all you see is your team, back to the question you just asked about, you know, young people, your team being attacked, whatever team you're on, whether that's team male, team white people, whatever, you assume that you're under siege. And that polarization isn't just political, it's emotional. And what we lose in that process is intellectual humility. And I think that's a lot of what we've lost in the media landscape right now. We're selling stories and we're selling clicks and outrage and not leaning into curiosity and helping people to ask bigger, better questions. And I think that that's a challenge that we're definitely going to have to contend with. But I think that we can win back trust. I do. I think it's going to take a world where we are transparent, and our aim is something more than neutrality. I really hate this belief right now that I keep hearing that keeps coming up of, you know, news outlets should be neutral, or even those who are reporting should be neutral. I think there's been a lot of flack for those who have been very clear about how they feel about the far right or the MAGA cult. And I think that that's unfair. Actually, I don't believe in neutrality. I can't think of a moment where it's achievable. I'm just like, that's just some BS to keep us civil and to keep us all sidesing, all livesing everything. And I think it's an unfair order. It's too tall an order to ask of people because I don't think it's achievable.
I agree with you. I'm glad to hear you say that. I agree. See, and I'm telling you, we are sharing. We brain share on many levels.
Right here.
Exactly. Like you know, we all walk around with biases, right? I mean, that's just they're innate in all of us, and oftentimes you're exactly right. It's one thing, again, that goes back to disinformation, the intentionally taking advantage of someone's biases to allow them to buy into whatever propaganda that they're selling them, right?
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Our aim needs to be something different than neutrality. I aim for, you know, integrity, accountability, discernment. And I even tell people, you know, people say to me all the time, like, it's very clear, like, you have a bias against MAGA and the far right. Yeah. But the thing is, I'm honest about that. I open with that in many cases. Like, just so you know, I'm a raging progressive. You're not going to get neutrality from me. I'm not going to be nice here. I'm going to break down the structure of their communication and their debate and their rhetoric. But as you were saying, bias is human. And I think that's something people keep forgetting. And that's not to give anyone a cop-out, but it's to say that it's literally how our brains work. We are all biased in many ways. There's so many biases that we hold, and it's literally just how your brain works. The key is to know it and then to mitigate your bias where you can, right? And to have those tools. And that's part of what critical thinking and exposure gives you, is the ability to mitigate your biases. And when and where you can is to also be forthright and accountable for your biases, and to just say, and that's why I often open with people to say, hey, from a place of integrity, I want you to know I'm very biased against MAGA. Like, you're not going to get anything nice out of me in their direction. And I'm open about that. And to me, that's better than neutrality. I'm not going to sit here and try to be neutral on all sides. I'm going to tell you, hey, I have this bias, and you're going to get that lean from me. And you can then decide based on what you hear and what you experience, what you want to believe and what you do with that information. And then that's on you. And that's, I believe, what it should be, is you are imparted information and then you get to decide.
And that speaks to the power of the traditional autocratic tendencies to discredit journalism, to discredit democratic institutions. So think about the world we live in now, where I always refer to him as the twice impeached, 4-time indicted, sexually abusing frauds or convicted felon. That's just that's the phrase that I coined for him. For years, priming the pump, priming the entire country that honest and integrity in journalism, although again, bias, we can talk about that.
Right.
An organization like everybody likes to accuse the left of watching CNN. I don't like their programming and their packaging. I just don't watch it. It's just not something I watch, but it's not biased to the point where it's misinformation and disinformation. So he primes the pump to say anything that's reported negative against him, whether it be the Atlantic or the New York Times or WAPO or NBC or CBS, they're the ones that have been told to millions of people that it's fake. Meanwhile, he lives on, OAN or Newsmax or Fox or whatever that might be. That's just a constant stream of misinformation, disinformation, and lies, that's why I asked the question about how do we gain some of that credibility back? And I like what you said. It may just be changing literal faces. Because again, the system was built by people who look like me to benefit people who look like me. So the more people who look like me continue to tell people who look like me that people who look like you are the enemy, that's going to be a tough hill to climb, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think back to that trust question, trust does collapse when people feel manipulated. And a lot of media, I do think today, uses emotional hijacking, a lot of that fear framing. And to rebuild trust, it is what I was saying earlier, a lot of that radical transparency, right? Tell people how the story was sourced, show your methodology. In media training, I teach that phrase of here's what we know, here's how we know it, and here's what we don't know. Right? Credibility isn't perfection. It's integrity and that honesty to say, here's where we stand. And even, not to give them a pass, but like even with Fox News, like, of course, they're hella biased and whatever, but I know what to expect from them. And at least if they were just saying, right, at least if they were just forthright with it, like, this is exactly what you're going to get from us, all these lies, and here's where it was sourced from, like, at least that's something in a starting place. But I think the trust collapses when people feel manipulated because they don't know, like, show your work. I go back to my math teacher who would always say, show your work. You can't just give me X equals Y, like, show your work. What was the process you got to get to that answer? I want more media to show their work. Here's what we know. Here's how we know it. Here's what we don't know. And just say it out loud.
So when you're going through your, I don't want to misspeak, you're a media trainer or someone who has participated in?
Yeah, that's a part of my job. I do train executives and public information officers on interacting with the media.
Dude, high five, because I do the exact same thing. Hook me up. There you go. I do the exact same thing. So when you're talking to your clients specifically in regard to media training, the reason I want to ask this question is I want people, because it is a skill.
That's right.
Not only to train somebody to do what we do, to train somebody in how to present to media, but is also a skill that people who present publicly have to be aware of. And there are people we can discredit people. Like I'll use Triple K Caroline Levitt as an example. She has been trained in media. She's again, objectively, she's good at what she does because although what she does is what she does, but she's good at it. So objectively, how would you score somebody like a Caroline Levitt on the media training continuum, so to speak?
Yeah, she uses the tools powerfully. Can't stand her, don't like her, she's harmful, all those things. Yes. She's gross. And there's a special place in hell, if it even exists, for someone like her.
A little inside joke that I have with our chat, Amira, just so you know, is I call it the day of the cross. Like if there's days that she's wearing the cross, you know she's not going to lie as badly. And then the days that she is, and one lie slips in, she might get burned by it. Anyway, I didn't mean to digress, but I always watch that now. And then our chat asked me, like, Steve, is she wearing the cross today? Yes, she is. Okay, yes, so the lies may not be as bad. Anywho,
someone in the chat said Spinderella, and I'd not heard that before. I love that. Yes, Spinderella.
It's true.
So
yes.
She uses the tools powerfully. She's clearly had some training, and she is masterful with those tools, the tools that we would impart of bridging and flagging and hooking and deflection and, changing the subject expeditiously. She's very sort of pointed. In many ways, she's harsh. and rude, but she uses the tools powerfully, and I can see that. So I think watching her, there are things you could learn. It's a master class in the tools that we exactly impart to people on. If you have a very specific message that you want to stay on, and you have a very specific something that you are trying to deliver, she does exactly that, right? If that is the call to action they have given her, she's doing her job, and that's why they love her and they eat it up. But to be clear, she is a harmful person to the entirety of the American public, but she uses the tools as they are taught to be used.
Yeah, I saw the eye roll. I got you. Yeah, I mean, you're right. She's doing her job as directed, but that would be an example. Like, her non-answers are answers. Her deflection away from the topic is, again, you are trained to do that. So people who are in these spaces, and the reason I wanted to bring that up is because the people who do what you and I do, we don't get enough credit or blame in some areas, depending on what your ideology is. But it's training, it's education, it's the ability to navigate these kinds of things. Growing up in media is one thing to say you're growing up in media, but how do you address certain questions? What tactics do you use? Deflection, denial, defend, delete, delay, those kinds of things that's what we see. That's why it's so frustrating for us when we see her non-answers, but that's how she was trained, and she's doing her job.
She is, and there's a science and a structure to it. And one of the things that I also try to remind people, because a lot of people have been asking for more of this, and I've been doing these, videos on the tools that I see being used in these quote unquote debate settings, and I use that term very loosely because they are not debate settings. They are for entertainment purposes, and they are performances. These are not true debates. But I call out what I'm seeing in terms of like flagging and hooking and anchoring and bridging, which are those media training tools that we impart to executives. But part of why I'm doing it, and I clarify this for people, is not because I think that's what you should do in a debate. These are not debate tactics. These are media training tactics that are helpful when you're on live stage, or when you're KK Caroline and you're in front of a series of reporters and you want to stay on message, you want to deflect, you want to bridge or flag to something that you think is important. That's what those tools are intended for. And that's why people have asked me, how come I've never gotten media training? Because very few people get media training. There are so few people who are an official public information officer, an official spokesperson for an organization, a government, or a higher ed institution. There are not many people who are media trained, and that's intentional, because not just everyone can be out here speaking on behalf of the seat holder or Harvard or whatever XYZ corporation. So no, you probably never got this training. And the reason I'm raising people's awareness of this is to say that in a debate setting, there are specific debate tools. Those are not what I see being used. What I see are media training tricks being used to deflect, to harm, to incite, and put disinformation out there. And the more you know that those tools are being used, the more you can look for them and have the awareness to ask different questions and to say, you didn't really say anything there, right? You didn't answer the question, you deflected. And I think that's something people should know, because people keep asking, well, where can I go to get that training? Probably nowhere. Like, even in my undergrad and graduate training, we skirted over media training. It was like a paragraph in the textbook, right? But you get that from someone like me or you if you are a media spokesperson for a company or for a government. But it is intentionally, relegated for a small group of people, that kind of training, because these are not tools you should be using in a debate setting. They are not debate tools.
And they should pay us a hell of a lot more for our skills. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there.
Agreed. Plus one.
They really should. So objectively, when we're talking about, the ability to either fire up a crowd or, deliver your message, I've always said this, objectively, that is something that Donald Trump has been extremely good at. The ability to motivate his base, the ability for them to stay on messages. And this has always been my criticism of the left by and large, is that the messaging, and I don't always think it's messaging, I just think it's the consistency of messaging from the left. It gets diluted a lot. And the right falls in line left falls in love. The left falls in love.
Yeah.
And at the top of the pyramid on the right is Donald Trump. His messages are consistent. He's not very smart, so he has to speak in terms in little sound bites. Would you grade him from a corporate comms and a media training perspective? How would you grade him in his ability to do what he does with his base, so to speak? I know, right?
I know. I like and don't like this question. Yes, he
That's
is,
fair.
again, similar to KKK Caroline. He is using the tools. He is using the tools as they are structured to be used. The consistency of message, like I said, what people hear over and over and over again is what they will believe, right? In marketing and comms, we say it takes 6 to stick, which just speaks to consistency. You've got to be consistent with the message. If you want people to believe the sky is red, you have to consistently say the sky is red, show them images of the sky being red, create a song about the sky being red, create t-shirts about the sky being red. You have to consistently beat that message into people's minds. And the right does that very, very well. They stay on message. What's that joke of like, well, let's just wait to see what Fox News says and then we'll know what Republicans think, right? Is they get on message. They get on message. They have always been better at organizing than us. And that's that's a two-edged sword, right? Part of that's because in many ways, a lot of them are lemmings and they just follow. And I think, on the progressive side and on the left side, we value being, individual thinkers. And so it's harder for us to fall in line with a plan and to organize in the same way. And that's a blessing and a curse, right? It speaks to our ethos, but it can also be harmful to our cause as we try to push up against a far right cultish MAGA world. So yes, he uses the tools as they're structured to be used, and he is very consistent, even if he's not doing it intentionally. And that's something I always tell people too, is I think a lot of these cult followers and even the far right and these pundits and politicians, I don't even think necessarily that they know these tools objectively or could speak to them. And I don't know that they are always using them with intention as much as they are accidentally, but that doesn't mean that it isn't a learned behavior that can still be useful, whether or not people can name it. And that's why I do what I do, is I try to give people the language and the structure so that you can name it and based on what you're seeing. Because a lot of people say, like, I knew there was something that I felt about that or something was off about it, but I didn't have the language. And so if I give you the language of that was bridging, that was flagging, that was deflection, that was manipulation, right? Now that you have the language, you can be a smarter consumer of media and you can be a more informed voter who says, you know what, as I watch this debate and the way they're answering or what they believe about issues, you have the tools to ask a different set of questions so that you can be informed and help to inform others in more powerful ways.
We're speaking with Amira Barger, friends, the author of Price of Nice. You can find the link to her book in the link tree that's in my bio. You and I never discussed how long you could join us. Are you have a hard stop? Do you need to bounce?
No.
Can you stay for a little while longer?
I'm here.
Awesome.
You got me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So then I want to talk about the transition to social media a little bit. Obviously, that's where the majority of people now consume their news, right? Which is exactly what we were just discussing, the dangers of that, especially algorithmically, right? Depending on what it is that you're seeking out. So what would be your advice for people? Or let me back up a second. First of all, the advantages and disadvantages of social media when it comes to conversations like this. What would you say they are?
I think it democratizes, right? People have more access to voices that you may not have heard before. Where would people ever hear you or I and our amazing brilliance that we should get paid more for, right?
Seriously, good point.
How would you ever know Steve and Amira? Where would you ever find us? So I think it democratizes a world where people with knowledge and with know-how are able to have dialogue and conversation with people as opposed to just the talking heads that were fed by big box corporations and billionaires, right? So I think that is a way in which it is helpful and is useful. And I think that, as much as people poo-poo social media and TikTok, it can be an educational platform, right? You're out here doing that. I'm out here doing that. We're educating people. We're giving people the language and the tools that they might not get otherwise. Not everyone has time to go back to school and get a 4-year communications studies degree, but they might come find me or you and learn some things. And I'm not even charging people for it, right? Just find me on TikTok, follow and listen in. So I think it's helpful and useful in that vein when it comes to the world of communications and media literacy. Is we're democratizing the access to information, good information. But on the other end of that, that also means there are people out here spreading lies. So there's that.
Which then leads to the integrity of journalism, right? Because everybody with access, just because, like I always talk about, reach is also responsibility.
Yes.
If you have a platform where you have a couple 100,000 people or a couple million people, we know that the social media spaces are filled with the grift, people taking advantage of misinformation, disinformation, and lies. I read an article from Wired magazine, which I really, really like. I like the way they approach their journalism. They talked about the influence of the the right-wing echo chamber on social media in particular, and how it's dominating. So you think about names like Charlie Kirk and Tim Pool and Joe Rogan, some of the most popular podcasters there is no equivalent on the left. There's none.
No.
There's a lot of people who do it on the left, but there's nothing that's as strong as that. Do you see that as an opportunity for left-wing voices, progressive voices to be more prominent in the face of others?
I struggle with that, and here's why. One, yes, I think there's opportunity for us to be saying more and doing more with voices that people trust. Here's why I struggle with it, and there's a tension within me of, I from a social justice, and if I put on my organizer hat, I think about how I don't know that we need one name and one face. I think when it comes to movements, I think that can be harmful. I think we had MLK back in the day, we had a Malcolm, and we had others, and I think they served a purpose. But I think sometimes in a movement, when you have a face or even 1, 2, or 3 main faces, I actually think in some ways that can actually be harmful. I don't know that we need one voice to speak for us. Obviously, it has been a powerful tool on the right. So like I said, I think there's a function in it. I think there's validity in what it can do for us in this moment. But I do struggle with that. I struggle with the idea of one voice, because even Martin was flawed. Love MLK, but even he was flawed, and even some of his ideas, or the way he framed things weren't all that we needed. And I think it drowned out other voices like a Malcolm or a Marcus Garvey or others who had ideas about how the movement should progress and the way that we should move in spaces. So I really struggle with putting people in seats of power, or anything where there's one person who is lauded as a leader of something or a voice of a movement, because I believe a movement should also be democratized, and it should be a multitude of voices, and it should be of the people and for the people, not a figurehead. So I struggle with that, is what's true.
I get that. I mean, I get that we don't need a left-wing version of Joe Rogan, for example. I completely understand what you're saying. That makes absolute sense, because, I mean, structurally, we talk about the left being a large tent, right? Good and bad. Lots of voices, the complexion of the left looks a lot different, which is good and bad, obviously. And in those conversations, when you have a bigger tent, that means you're going to have bigger voices, which is great. Sadly, though, when it comes to elections, that's where we run into trouble on the left, because all those voices want their agendas, for lack of a better term, to be prioritized, and you just can't get that all the time. As a fellow progressive, you understand. We're like, I don't want to be talking about little bites of the ACA. I want full-blown universal health care. Unless you're talking about that, then you're going to lose me. Like, I want to overfund public education. I don't want little bites of the apple. I want the whole damn pie. Right?
Exactly. And
so, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that's why I tell people, I try to understand the container I live in, right? Because even myself as a progressive, I don't want a 2-party system. But nobody wants to hear that, and that's going to split votes. And so it's like, okay, let me pull back. Let me focus on the mission at hand, right? Keep the main thing right now. And the main thing is we can't have this seat holder in the seat again. And we failed this time around. Clearly, some things happened. But yeah, so I agreed. I think we have to understand the container we live in. And what I mean by that is the truth is we have a two-party system. I don't want that. There's a different world I can imagine, but it's the world I have right now. So what do I need to do right now to reduce harm where we can, right? And if that means we need to have a particular voice or we need to focus on a particular candidate, like I'm going to do what I can to reduce the harm in the container I live in right here and right now, and then do what I can to reimagine and change the system when we're not in a scenario like we are now, where we're only how many months in and we're already tired and we still have 3 more years to go. And it feels
it feels like 15. It feels like 50. I didn't have gray hair in January. This is all since then.
This is new.
Yeah, totally new. So it's a really interesting thought, and I never really framed it that way. I always look at it as people who are in the social media space and as content creators, and we know that we're being dominated by the right. And I like your perspective. I never really thought about it that way. Again, the big tent idea. We don't need a counter to Joe Rogan. I would say that we do need more prominent voices who represent the voices of our party more than we have now.
Yes.
Like I always talk about, every single time we ask black women to show up at our elections, black women always show up.
That's right.
Always show up.
Always.
And always continue to show up. And I always say, it's all men until it's no men. It's all white people until it's no white people, because we seem to be the ones that are holding society back from progressing forward, right? So I always frame it as, I don't look at it as Democrat, Republican always. I look at it as conservative and progressive. You are either wanting to move society, because there are conservative Democrats too that are holding us back as well.
That's right.
Right? So how do we crack into that? Because I feel like I just did a live this week and we talked about polling. So I'm not a big fan of polling as far as choosing a candidate, because that's an inexact science, because opinions change. But public opinion on issues, Gallup, Ipsos, Pew over the years, very credible polling organizations, those are a pretty good indicator. So the overwhelming majority of Americans, by and large, believe what progressive believe. Universal health care, responsible firearm legislation, expanded access to education, tax the rich, so to speak. But that message is not getting through enough to people in the minority. So that's why I was saying, do we need more voices?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, how do we cut through that, where we get more people understanding that the majority of the country wants what socialist, commie, whack job, radical leftists want, right?
Right. We are the same, actually. Yeah, I think yes, we all want the same things. It's funny how people want to deny that. I think a lot of it has to go back to community. I think that I saw this in myself even, and had to really root this out. And even in my own community, I think there were a lot of people who were so tired and felt like nothing I do is going to change this and this potential outcome, the writing that they saw on the wall. And I think what I was saying earlier about proximity to relationship, I do think that there are big voices that we need, like our version of, a Charlie Kirk, Joe Rogan, and what have you. But I also think the one-on-one conversations that happen, with your next door neighbor, across the dinner table, in the grocery store, in the places where you live, where people know you and know your face and what you believe and who you are and how you show up, and might have greater trust in you, I think is a part of how we can actually move the needle. I hate to say that it's on us, it's only our responsibility, but I do think the one-on-one conversations in your immediate world, and I've seen it in my own world, of people who there was something malleable about them and they could be moved, and they were moved away from the cult that is MAGA through relationship. It took time and it takes longer. And I think that's why this work is hard, is that moving people from the propaganda that they have accepted and been fed for so long is not easy work, and it's not swift work. it's your life's work. And for me, with my own family, who believes very differently than me, I'm very much a black sheep and the only progressive of my family, which is wild because just the math on that doesn't make sense to me. Does not make sense. How just me? Really? What the hell happened here? But it is my life's work of helping to move those people, because I know them, and I know that you don't want to harm people. I know that you don't actually believe these things, but there is this propaganda machine that has so encapsulated and enraptured people and their attention, and it takes the work of one-on-one relationship for some of those to be moved, and that's not easy work. And it's taxing, it's emotionally exhausting, it's emotional labor. I'm tired. I've been tired for 10 years, which again, like you said, gross. Wow, we've been here for 10 years. Yeah,
10 years. I know not every voting block is a monolith. I get that. When you see members of your community voting conservative and voting Trump in particular, what's your initial reaction to that when you see that? And then have you been able to unpack it? I have some theories on it. I'm curious as to how you react when you see, especially black men, a big shift this past election. What's your reaction to that when you again understand? I understand that not every voting block is a monolith. I get that, but it seems really interesting to me. That's always been one I've been unable to figure out.
So unbelievably frustrated, and a lot of eye rolls, and hurt, quite frankly, to see people, the constant talk track is people are voting against their own interests, and they are, and that's what's true. But I know that so much of it, and maybe it's because of the space that we work in, and I have these tools, thinking about the think, feel, do, and the psychology and the sociology of it, is that it is the propaganda machine, is that people have believed one singular lie. And I also think that's part of why I harp on the work I get to do with this nonprofit of the critical thinking that we impart to kids as early as middle school, where we can, is because so many of the people I see voting against their own interests, they are single issue voters. It's like this one thing. And I'm like, but there's a whole world that you experience. Like, abortion is your one thing, or trans rights is your one thing that you're voting against amidst all these other things, but you're on Medicaid.
Yeah.
You rely on Social Security. You're going to be harmed. All these other things in your life, but this one single issue and the propaganda you've bought into about this one thing has you making a choice that will harm the entirety of your life and the people that you actually care about. And that's weird to me.
Yeah, it's the pick me mindset, right?
Yes.
Or, the proximity to power, right? Assimilation, climbing the ladder, so to speak. We hear the generational wealth argument. I get all these things. There's four distinct blocks that I've always questioned in regards to their support. It'd be veterans, members of the BIPOC community, women, and members of LGBTQIA. Those four. I mean, again, not every voter is a monolith, and I understand there's a lot of people who are choosing their vote for their wallet. I get it. But it's those groups of people that I've never understood. And I think we agree that it's just this weird phenomenon that it's one thing that they'll hold on to. I think about the term DINKs, dual income, no kids, gay men, top of the food chain from a capitalism perspective. They will choose to vote for a tax break.
They love to vote Republican. I'm right outside San Francisco, and let me just say, y'all are dangerous. Y'all are dangerous.
It's crazy. I don't, and I'm not, again, as we say, we want to unpack the mind of MAGA down the road as we do, put them in a time capsule and open up their brain to determine where some of those factors come from. All right. So you mentioned education. If you were to design a curriculum at the middle school level, I know you're working with these nonprofits now. Yes. If you were to design a curriculum around critical thinking, media literacy, the ability to identify propaganda, disinformation, and misinformation, what would that look like at the public school level?
Ooh, Okay, at the public school level, and
I say public specifically. I use public specifically just because I believe in the public education system as a mom who was a public educator and a professor. And yeah, so that's why I said it. Yeah.
Yes, my child is in public school, and that is an intentional choice. I believe in the public school system. I'm here for it. So, start early and often, age 5, seriously, right? Kids already consume content. They don't just know how to question, they just don't know how to question it sometimes. And we should teach them not just to read, but to ask, why did someone make this, right? And we need to teach them emotional regulation alongside critical thinking, because panic spreads faster than proof. And that's a combination of what's taught in school and then what you're doing, at home. And I also think we have to start with shared values, not necessarily only shared facts. Instead of here's what's true, start with we both want our families to be safe, right? We hear that a lot, is you have to meet people where they are, so we both want our families to be safe. So let's explore, how we can make that happen and what's accurate. And I teach this, right, as a technique, bridging to belonging or with belonging. In my day jobs, we talk a lot about what's happening in the anti-DEI, anti-ESG space right now. And we're trying to push back with focusing on shared values. What's true is people want to provide for their families, right? And so we can have a conversation from there about how actually diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace makes it more likely that you can provide for your family. And here's all the ways how. I think different generations have different trust anchors. For Gen Z, it's peer review. For boomers, it's legacy institutions. So you have to meet the credibility model of the audience that you are speaking to and working with. And I think that kind of nuance it's hard for people because it takes more time. Like I said, it's so much of the work that we have to do. The problem is, I think that we as institutions and as leaders in some ways have gotten lazy. And the idea that you have to speak to Gen Z very differently than boomers, and you have to curate your message, and that takes more time, and that takes more energy, and it takes more output. I think that is I think that's scary for people, and it feels too big, and it feels too impossible, but it is part of the answer of how we have to think about the literacy and the critical thinking that we're imparting and training to across different generations and political divides. So, for example, with the Journalistic Learning Initiative, we impart curriculum similar to what I'm talking about of starting early, shared values, going through and reading articles and helping them to understand how to ask questions like a journalist. We give that in English classes, and we give that to English teachers are probably the number one users of the curriculum that we provide. And I think they're great because they understand how to use language and words as power. And so much, I think, of what's happening right now in the world is exactly that. And I tell people words shape worlds. That's not just a quick quipped saying. And that's why you hear people so often say, your words matter. Because they literally do shape worlds, because they shape perception and what people think, what they feel, and therefore what they do. And so we start in English classes in middle school with kids about the language that we use, how we read, how you, like even going back to English class, right? We used to unpack just one paragraph of, and pulling it out. I think we've gotten away from that. And even these little videos I'm doing on TikTok now is doing exactly that, of taking a phrase or an instance or a paragraph and unpacking what was actually said there. And I think that's a skill that we've lost, that I remember learning in English class. And I think we have to get back to that.
I totally agree. Are you concerned about the future of public education?
Yeah, I think there are so many tentacles to that concern. One, we don't pay teachers enough. Full stop.
Preach.
What the heck?
Have you been watching my shows? Have you been watching my shows? Because every single day I'm like, overfund public education, and we should pay teachers so much that states across the country are recruiting for them, the best of the best, fighting for them.
Agreed.
So, thank you.
Agreed. And so I'm worried about, who's going to be out here teaching these kids. Like, there are so many passionate educators, but in the world and the economy we live in, they have families to feed, and they can't do it on a public school teacher salary. I'm here in California, NorCal, where I live, and most of the teachers in our school don't even live in the city here because they commute in from far away because they can't. And that's ridiculous to me that teachers who have so much power and are shaping the minds of the future voters, the future CEOs, and we pay them pennies. That's wild to me. That's wild.
I totally agree. I mean, and a lot of this, again, we talked about propaganda, disinformation, the assault on public education from the right, thinking that, first of all, not understanding what the Department of Education does. There's that. We now know the Supreme Court backed up Mr. Trump's desire to gut the Department of Education. What folks don't realize is that, like we discussed earlier, voting against your best interests, a lot of underserved communities depend on federal dollars to keep their federal programs open in support of kids with special needs. Because it's not just radical leftist commies who have kids that need special needs.
Imagine
there
that.
are hardcore conservatives that have special needs as well, and that's where that budget comes from. And then, I mean, many communities, especially underserved communities, rely on public school lunches and breakfasts and lunches for their kids. And so I'm glad you said that, because I fully advocate for overfunding public education for the first time in our nation's history. Models like Scandinavian countries, countries in Europe who approach their education as a trusted institution. Teachers are some of the most highly regarded and revered members of their community, and we need to get back to that.
We do need to get back to that. We do, yeah. So I am very much concerned for the future of public education and the harm that's going to be done to the kids and to the next generation, because, you know, I'm privileged in many ways in that we're able to, you know, supplement what my daughter learns and provide things to her. And not everyone has access to that, and not everyone has the time for that. In a world where many of us are working multiple jobs, or both, you know, caregivers in the home are working outside of the home, it's hard for people to give, I think, the attention and the extra effort that's required to supplement what the kids are learning and to give them what they need to thrive and their best in our educational institutions. And, you know, that's wider commentary on the world we're living in right now. But yeah.
Yeah, we've spoken this. I talk about this in the space a lot. The void in participation for many people on the left looking for perfection. The reason that Moms of Liberty got a foothold in so many school boards across the country is because Democrats let them.
That's right.
They didn't run. They ran again. They ran for a seat that was unopposed, or they supplanted themselves. So we've got a lot. We can't blame everything that's happened on the right. We have to take some of that ownership ourselves for not participating, right?
And there are things that we can do. I think, you know, what you just said is such a valid point of, I think too often we're so focused on what's happening at a federal level and even a state level that we forget about those local things. Like I tell people, like, please run for your local school board. Please go to the school board meeting. Like, please, you know, I served on my daughter for years, in California, we call it the LCAP committee, but the committee that helps decide the curriculum and the safety in the school, and we liaise with the principals and the board. Like, there are ways locally, you know, when and where you have the time and the privilege to get involved, that we absolutely have to. Because I even think about, you know, the ban on books, that, you know, the report that came out in the Washington Post were that it was 11 people who were so committed,
I know,
to their disgusting beliefs and propaganda and vitriol, that 11 people ran a campaign and got books banned. What the heck? 11 people in a country of 11 people?
I know.
The commitment, 11 people. So I tell people, like, we have to stop sleeping on it. Like, there are things that we can do, campaigns we can run, local ways to engage, to push back against some of these things. But the fact that 11 people had so much influence and power that is now impacting the lives of all of us is wild to me.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
That's what
The thing is, we have the power to do the same. Who are our 11 people, and what's the thing we're going to do to tip the scales? Because we got to get back to, humanity and dignity and teaching the kids. And we've never been as good at organizing, and we said that already, but it's true. And we've got to get clearer on the task at hand. What is the thing that we're going to aim for to tip some of the scales? And we have to make sure that we are coordinating and organized to do that, and to not forget about the power of local engagement. And, if you feel that the issues are too big and you can't change the world, I always tell people, change your world, right? Do what you can in your school system, in your city, on your local commission, like change your world. And that has ripple effects. Right? Don't sleep on that. Like, the federal stuff feels big, and Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, it's big, and it is big, and it feels like boiling the ocean, but there's absolutely something that you can do locally in your immediate world. And that matters, because that's going to have real impact on people that are your neighbors and people that you love.
We do every Friday. I call it Antifa Friday. We've added a feature called Unexpected Angels. So we're going to start focusing on individuals, whether it be children, community leaders, activists, people that are doing the work that are not looking for recognition but deserve to be recognized.
Yeah.
Like I close the show every day with the words "to do something," because I firmly believe that as well. You can't boil the ocean. I mean, we can all, whether it be reading a book to kids after school, or bringing lunch to your neighbor who might need it, or sitting down with somebody who lives alone. All those kinds of things matter. So do you, a couple more questions, then we should wrap. Again, thank you so much for your time today. This has been absolutely amazing. I really, really appreciate that.
It's so fun.
Well, thank you. What gives you hope? What gives you hope in two things? What gives you hope in general, and what gives you hope in our fight back against distrust and disinformation, like some of the things we discussed today?
I mean, honestly, it is conversations like this. I have these kinds of conversations in real life, with my, at the height of 2016, a group of us here in the little town I live in NorCal, we started our own Indivisible chapter. And then we also started a Black Lives Matter chapter. And we have conversations like this, exactly what we're doing with friends here, commenting and having thoughts in real life. And that gives me hope, as I know that there are other communities of people who are gathering, who are having these exact conversations about what can we do in our city, right? And what impact can we have right here on the people closest to us that will absolutely have a ripple effect. Young people, I have a 12-year-old. And the young people give me hope. They are so curious. They don't want sanitized answers. They don't want clean answers. They want receipts. They want truth. They are storytellers. They are artists. They are comedians. They are educators. And people who know that truth isn't just data, it's connection. And that gives me hope. I think we have to get back to connection and community and what that means. And I tell people all the time, right, because I work in corporate America in the daytime, and they love to say hope isn't a strategy. But I talk about Miriam Kaba, who is an organizer and activist, who always says hope is a discipline. And I truly believe that and try to live that every day. Hope is a discipline, which means that we have to show up for it every day, and we have to take small steps. We have to do, as you said, do one thing, one action, however subtle or small you might believe it to be, because that is hope. And hope is a discipline, and hope can be a game changer. And so we shouldn't poo-poo it. Hope can be a strategy when wielded in the right hands. So, yeah.
And joy is resistance. Keep that in mind too, right? Finding little things in your life that inspire you. Like I'm a big person. I like to ground. I take my shoes off and walk in the grass. I've been doing it my whole life. It's whatever that might be, whatever you find joy, whether it's music or the arts or cooking or whatever that might be. Don't forget about those little things that fuel us. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share? I know we talked about a whole bunch of topics, and like you said, you might riff. So feel free to riff. Like you've been riffing all morning, and I appreciate it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share in closing?
I think the one thing I would share is what I was saying earlier about the neutrality piece, because it keeps coming up. I don't know if it's just in my life and the universe is trying to, I don't know, but This idea that right-leaning, left-leaning media are equally responsible, I would say it's not symmetrical. And, I work in comms and I want people to remember that. But both sides contribute to noise and to bias and selective framing, but only one side has institutionalized disinformation as a strategic weapon against the people. And that's not a partisan opinion. It's a structural reality. Entire ecosystems, from cable networks to social media influencers and political PACs, are built by one side around creating and spreading falsehoods to maintain power and to sow so much distrust. And we can't fix an imbalance if we're too afraid to name it. And is there really any scenario where neutrality is achieved? And I know people prefer that I sit here and stay neutral, and neutrality is a myth. As I said earlier, it's marketed as objectivity, but it's rarely neutral in practice and almost never neutral in the impact it has on real people. People can be fair or balanced, sure, but even then their framing, their lived experiences, their blind spots, all of it shapes what they call neutral, right? And neutrality isn't the absence of bias, it's the denial of it. And in systems that are built on inequality, pretending to be neutral often means siding with power, and it means maintaining the status quo because challenging it might seem too political. And that's exactly right why I wrote a whole book about the price of nice, to say it plainly, that nice will keep you silent when the moment calls for courage or nerve, because neutral is often just a softer way of saying, you over there, you stay in your place.
I love that. Again, this is Amira Barger. I am so grateful that you got up early to spend some time with us. The name of her book is The Price of Nice. You can find that it's linked in the link tree that's in my bio. Will you come back
and
talk to us again?
Anytime.
We can connect offline, and there's so many things that you touched on today that we could build an entire 4-hour discussion about. I know the chat was really appreciative of what you did in your time with us here. So again, Amira, thank you so very, very much. It was an honor to talk to you, and thank you for dropping. And again, as people who do what we do, we are a very small, tight-knit community for sure. So anybody who does, it's a labor of love at times, and yes, we should be paid more, but what the work that we do is really, really important. So I really appreciate you shining a light on that. Thank you so very, very much. Appreciate it for you being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, and
thank you
all
so
of
much,
you for
Amira.
listening in. Cheers.
Thank you very much. See you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I'm so grateful for you. Again, thank you, Amir, for appreciate that. Thank you so much. Okay. That was great. Again, The Price of Nice. You can find the title, the link to that in the link tree that is in my bio. Please head on over there and support Amira for what she's doing. But just the topics that we discussed today are so critically important. So I think that's a great spot to wrap. I've got a little bit of capitalism that I've got to do myself. Again, thank you, Amir. Appreciate you very, very much. Thank you, Doug Raiders. We're actually about to drop anyway. All right, friends. So no Facts After Dark tonight, I should say, but we'll be back on Monday morning. Again, just as a programming note, we will be doing Unexpected Angels. We'll have more conversations, hopefully, with amazing people like Amira again. We will also be doing our Minutes with Manny on Monday as we break down some immigration topics. He's been doing an amazing job of covering it. So yeah, who are we going to raid, friends? I appreciate the raiders coming in to join. Actually, well, hold on one second. Let me. I'm going to bring up Eve real quick. You're in a big box. Hi.
Hi, I am in a big box. Oh my goodness. What a treat.
You are. You are.
Well, before you wrap, I want to go ahead and do our weekly raffle giveaway.
Oh, right. Forgot all about it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm here for, to remind you, silly.
Appreciate that. You see what I mean? Why I need a team? Yes, exactly.
I'm going to scroll out for a moment and direct everyone's attention to the announcement channel in Discord, and we'll go ahead and spin the.
Okay, we're spinning the wheel. These are for active subscribers. The wheel is being spun. We need a drum roll. Do I have one? That's all I got.
It's glitching on me. I'm so sorry. I'll go ahead and just spin it and everyone can see who the winner is. But I
And then we
think,
can announce. Yeah.
yeah, we can announce it. But I think it's glitching because I'm trying to switch between Discord and TikTok. So
That's fine. We will announce it. We'll announce it on Monday for the winners. Again, it's for active subscribers. So thank you all. Eve, thank you for doing that for us as well. And stay tuned, friends. We will make sure that we get that done and we'll address it on Monday. And we'll announce the winner on Monday. So thank you, my dear. I appreciate you.
yes, thank you.
Okay. We are going to raid. Who are we going to raid? Let's raid Mo, guys. Okay. We just raided Olive, so we're gonna raid Mo. Again, everybody, thank you. Programming note, no facts after dark tonight. I know people like the show, but I can't do it every Friday night. But we'll be back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time. Again, thank you, Amira Barger, for joining us. Last plug for her book, The Price of Nice. You'll find the link in the link tree in my bio. If you've not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please consider doing that. Remember, we are crowdfunded here. If you like what we do and you want to participate in our show and support the cause, you can find all my various pay apps at Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. They're all at Factsstillmatter. Love you guys. Love you, mods. Thank you all very, very much. The smartest chat on TikTok, the best mods in the business.